I'm in the void. Guys, I completely forgot. I was so confused as to why we have Pokemon drops, guys. How do we have Pokemon drops? Oh, that's so good. That's so good, genuinely. Hold up. I got too overexcited. I didn't even open up my programs. I was like, what is going on? There we go. There we go. Let's see. Congratulations on a first, Jaybird. Congrats. Good job. There we go. Now you can see me. Also, W. Oh my god. God damn it, Jaybird. Enjoy your emotes. Thank you for the gifted subby. Thank you, Jaybird. That deserves one big boom from me. Big boom! How are you guys? It's been a minute, guys. Unfortunately, I think I need to genuinely, I think I need to like have my schedule be earlier. I keep falling asleep, bro. Like dog, big dog. I'll wake up like around 4 to like 5 a.m. my time, and then I'll do all the stuff that I need to do during the day, and then I'll do some editing, I'll do some artwork. I try to keep consistent on doing something at least reorganizing my files, even though I don't want to edit every day. I hate it. But besides the point, around like 5 or like 7, 5 to 7, I end up just falling asleep. It's really bad. It's really bad. Here, let me plug in my tablet real quick. But how have you guys been? Any updates on life? I don't know. Did you get a car or something? Nope, nothing. A real Jaybird. Real. There we go. Let me see if everything's working on my side. Alright, bet. Okay, good. We're good to go. First, I think. Oh my god, hi Lisa. How are you guys? Hi Lisa. Never mind. So close. Yeah, it's been a hot minute. When was the last time I streamed? I don't even remember when was the last time I streamed. Yeah, guys, genuinely, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited to stream. And then I fall asleep, and I'm like, oh, it's 1 a.m. now. Oh. So I was like, I might as well just go back to bed. Never mind. There we go. 3 days ago! 3 days ago! I like stream every 3 days. Dude, this is so bad. Genuinely, this is so bad. I feel so bad. Yeah, I think we're just gonna try to be more consistent on like being just earlier. Like maybe we'll stream around like 2 or like 3 p.m. my time or something. I don't know. My schedule allows it to do it. Also, ad attack. I love how Lisa always comes in when it's like ad time. It's really funny. I'm gonna go to the corner of darkness now as I didn't see the pin till now. No worries. We're promoting Pokemon apparently, so I understand not being able to see it. 75! You're crazy, Jaybird. You're crazy. You're so locked in, bro. You're so locked in. Congrats on 75 stream streak. Oh my god. Here, let me do some borks for you, dog. Bork. I don't know how many borks that was, but bork. Oh my god, when I used to do it one by one, that was crazy. I can't help it. God damn it, Lisa. God damn it. It's really funny. You're so consistent with it. Like regardless of whatever stream I'm in, whether it's like Colgate's or like Snooze or even Evermore's, you always pop in right when the ad starts, and it's really funny. There you go. Let me see. Anything to do with me? Not really. I just, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Editing is ass. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Editing is ass. So I'm trying to edit this video about art fight, and I realize now how much effort it's going to take to like make graphics for it. And it's so dumb. It's like, dude, like for example, how the video is going to go is that I have the first part down pretty much, which is like me saying, oh my god, we're going to be using a wheel to determine our art fight attacks. Teehee teehee. And then this is our challenge. We have 4 different goals that we're going to do, but it's the goals that we have to like make an infographic for, and then each section, because I want to do like a date and time. So it's like, oh my god, we're doing 24 hours of art fight attacks. So it's like we're starting off at like 5 a.m. and we're ending around 5 a.m. the next day. And it's really funny because you can hear my commentary of how tired I am. You can hear me being like, all right guys, let's get this bread. It's like 2 a.m. or we're gonna start a new drawing. Or like my reactions to like the wheel is really funny. And so with that, it's just editing the clips down and then putting them in the timeline. But man, the infographics really getting me. But I shall persist. I shall persist. I think we're like 20% done, and I'm like, damn, dude. The ads to smack me every time I come in. Ad, please release me. I'm free. There you go, Lisa. Now you can roam around. You're free. You're free. What else? I've also been recording for what do you call it? I've been recording me playing Fields of Mystria. I played 2 years of Fields of Mystria. I also been working on commissions too. I don't know. There's so many like little projects I've been trying to keep up with, which is good in a sense. Like I always want to make sure I keep up with my commissions. That's why we're doing commissions tonight. Let's see. Anything else? Yeah, I was doing 1 year in Mystria, 2 years in Mystria, and then 3 years in Mystria, and then I was gonna do like a challenge to be like, okay, well, we'll see how fast we can get to marrying Calderis for shits and giggles. So like that's like what, 4 video ideas? I don't know. I've never done, not never. I think this is my second time doing a video where it's a lot of footage that I need to organize. So I got a lot of help from the YouTube girlies who do vlogs. I was like, what? You can import folders into DaVinci? What? I was like, oh yeah, you just do it like this, boop, 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 boop. And I'm like, oh. And their organization system's really nice because they're like, okay, well, we're doing like the basic of basic organization. And to just have someone to be like, hey, this is how you do it. Like, just do it like this, simple enough, and it'll work out. And I'm like, yo, big brain. Okay, big brain. Oh yeah, fun thing. Welcome home website got an update. Oh nice, let's go. Also, thank you for the care package, Lisa. Thank you. Let's see. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Also, there you go. No problem. Oh my god, what is wrong with my stupid? Hold up, let me go fix that. Let's see. It's my static head pets that are triggered. Oh, you want the Blorbo? Bet. Okay, here. Let me turn off this one. I think it's static. And then where is the Blorbo? To see Fish, Lin, So, Artax, Joker, Cooper, Diet Coke. Oh, I don't have the Blorbo actually. Let me grab it real quick. Where is it? Where is it? I have so many folders. I have so many folders. There you go, Blora. I am big now. Oh! Where'd I go? Where'd I go? Oh, I didn't have it. Hold up. I didn't have it loop. I just exploded as soon as it was done. There you go. Enjoy, Lisa. Oh my god, silver 155! 155! There you go. Sad news, I lost my streak. No! RIP. Honestly, I think it's half people like not showing up in time, and then the other half is just YouTube being a booty. Being a booty. Because like, there's been times where I am very consistent in people's streams, and then I'll just lose it. And I get so mad. I'm like, what? And I sit down and I'm sad. Because I like flexing on people, like, you thought I wasn't here? I'm a lurker. They just drop like 100 stream streak and then leave. Well, not even leave, just like stop talking. So they're like, oh, Reaper, thank you so much for the 10 stream streak, or like, thank you for the 100 stream streak. I don't know if you're still here, but like, thank you so much. Now I'm 2 stream streak and fair, oh my god, fair. Also, oh my god, guys, I've been on like a streak of listening to music. So like I've been either listening to old Vocaloid music, which is like, for example, Childish War, and guys, if you're ever into producers or whatever of Vocaloid, like Vocaloid music or whatever, tell me why Giga's in everything. Tell me why Giga and Kira are in everything, and it sounds so good. I like listen to music and I'm like, fuck it up, and then I hear the Giga and I'm like, yo, no wonder why I like this. I also been listening to like the song Tipsy. Is it I think the song is called Tipsy. Yeah, Wakuna. Oh my god, Wanuka. There you go. I can read, but I really like that song. And I listened to this song, I think it was Ramen ended up singing it, and I was like, oh, I really like this song actually. And then I think a year later I kept seeing more and more people cover it, so like if anyone sings that song, there's a high probability that I'm in the comments like same thing with like Daddy Daddy Do and like the Chainsaw Man song. I was like, man, there's so many covers of songs that I just listen to the covers. I don't even listen to like the originals. Because I feel like everyone brings their own energy, you know? Like, Anyways, gonna go lurk, but I hope you have a lovely stream as usual. Also, might drop off some doodles of Father Bread Sillies later, hopefully. Yeah, of course. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the lurk. Thank you. Reaper! Cooper! Hi, Cooper. Just want to stop and say hi from work and have fun stream. Thank you, Cooper. Oh my god, look at us. Look at us. Look at the aura. I love the art text emotes. They're my favorite thing to do. Now we have three. We have three. We have Cooper, we have me, and we have Snoo. Pretty fun things. Pretty fun things. Or oh my god. I listened to this song, right? One of the most popular like VTuber covered songs, because I think there are certain songs that are always sung by corporate VTubers, and I think a lot of it just boils down to like Japanese copyright laws. I think a huge part of it's just that, so everyone kind of sings the same set of songs. I'm gonna be so real. And what I think is so interesting is this version of the song, right? I would play it, but then YouTube's gonna strike me down. It's basically Shanti. I forgot who made the original. Wotaku and Kaito. Wait, Kaito sang the original? Damn, that's crazy. Actually, that's crazy. I didn't even know. But what I really like about this cover is that they're robots. So like the voices are like robots. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's not like a person who is singing and they have like a robotic filter to their voice. It's like a toaster going off. It's so good. Here, let me share the link. And honestly, solid character design, guys. Solid ass character designs. I was like, when I first listened to it, I was like, oh my god, what is this? This is crazy. And I was like, okay, wait, no, fuck it up. I want more covers from this person, because I believe it's their original characters, I assume. Possibly? Question mark. Or maybe they just made like a cover for it. I'm not too sure. But I have seen these characters around, and I think their designs are really nice. They're really nice. Here, let me see if I can take a screenshot of the video and then put it on screen. I'm waiting for them to like turn back to normal. Hold up. Give me a minute. Come on, come on, come on. They zoom into their their faces when they both speak. There we go. Got it. Where's my OBS? There you go. See, their character designs are really nice. I didn't think I would like this as much as I do. It's really nice. Also, hi Lemon. Hi. How are you? They got those type of designs that I want to draw. They got them type of designs that I want to draw. I think it's like something that's very similar to a lot of artists is when they see a design that they really like, they want to draw it. They're like, that'd be really cool to draw. And that's how I feel about like for some designs that I see on like I guess some OCs that I see randomly, if that makes sense, because the most way that I'm exposed to original characters, and it's not necessarily through like lore or like I don't know, sketches or speed paints, it's primarily through music. So most of the time when I see a character, usually they're like edited in a certain way to a certain song, or they're like, I don't know, uh they're placed in like an animatic type of thing, which makes me more interested in the character because I'm like, okay, why did you choose this song? Or like, oh, okay, well, um I really like the creativity of the author, and also like I don't know, like I think it boils down to creativity of using the music, and then it boils down to like just having the brain to really find a music piece and then be like, hey, I want to edit my character to this song because I think it really goes well with them. I'm like, oh. And I give a lot of props to anyone who does like musical covers, which are not only people who are musically talented and like lyrically or like composition wise, etc., but able to also be, what do you call it? Like they're a music artist, but they're also an artist, if that makes sense. Like they're able to draw a lot of their illustrations or their characters or thumbnails. And I have like a lot of like respect for that, because sitting down and then drawing a specific style for like a video and it's all on you, I think is very commendable, because that's it's not easy. It's not easy. Like for example, a big person that I like to watch is Senna, and Senna does all of his own illustrations, and you can tell that it's all him because the art style is extremely consistent, as well as just like he's been doing this since the start. So I'm like, dude, I really commend that. Let's see. How long have we been yapping? About 30 minutes. Okay, that's good enough for me. Oh my god, I was scrolling YouTube to like listen to another song, right, or to like put on some more music for like my headphones before we get started to drawing. And I've been listening to more and more manhwas. Like I mentioned this last time that we saw each other, right? And it's really sad to see that, I don't know, for me it's sad to see that there's a lot of like AI art, and I'm like, damn, dude. Because when it comes down to it, I listen to a lot of manhwa recaps, and I try to stick to people who use their own voice. And the reason why I do that is because for me, if I like it's like two wolves, right? It's two wolves inside me. A part of me doesn't mind the like the voice, because usually they have like text to speech, right? But I can't guarantee that the voices that they use are not like AI generated and like scrubbed off of someone else, right? Then I feel weird about it, and I'm like, well, not many people are completely confident in their speaking voice, whether it be them being a native English speaker or not native English speaker, right? Like they speak a whole different language, and their English, they have an accent to it. And especially with English, and you're making content on YouTube, I feel people are less forgiving. Like if you have an accent that is very distinct or like not favorable to hear, I think it's a harder time to be a YouTuber. Because I didn't even realize that after listening to one of this dude. He ended up talking about how he was like, yeah, you know, I tried really hard to work on my accent, and I knew that I was always going to have an accent when I speak English. I knew I was always going to have some sort of an accent on it, right? But I've tried to mimic other YouTubers and other content creators who had a more pleasant accent that was like in my region in order to make my videos better. And that I have never even thought about. I was like, that is crazy to think about. Like, I don't know. Because for me, obviously, English is my language, right? I'm very fluent in it, and I have never thought of like, oh, I need to do this in order to be heard. Because for the most part, only thing I work with, only thing that I need to focus on is being consistent in the way that I speak in like the rhythm wise. So all the pauses that I make, all of the like breaths that I take and things like that, that's what I pay attention to. But also my mumbling. I'm a very big mumbler. I'll be mumbling, bro. So that's what I try to be aware of, but not of my accent. Because again, I have a very basic American accent. So hello, thank you. I appreciate it. Welcome on in. But yeah, and so what I'm getting at with the, listening to Modwell recaps is that I realized that it's a hard thing because I like listening to Modwell recaps because I don't need to like go and find the source image, like the source images or whatever. Because depending on what platform it is, I don't want to support that platform. And also depends on like just accessibility, right? Because sometimes a lot of the manhwa that I see is like fan translated. It's not like they don't have an official partner. So it's like, oh, okay, well then there's not a lot of legality around it. Like for example, when I first read the MXTX books, when I first read them, I read them as fan translations because there was no official English translation. And then later on, when they did release the English version or like have an English publisher, a lot of people complained because it wasn't as accurate or it didn't have those cultural nuances. Because a lot of times when fans will do a fans translation, there's multiple people working on it. So like maybe a group of like 10 people who have like a really huge passion about the project and who are willing to put in that extra time. Because again, like they don't need to do this, but they're doing this for the love of the game, right? But they're also able to put a lot more information in like the footnotes. Like, okay, this is the cultural significance if you're reading from a Western audience to be aware of. And that's what I really enjoyed about reading a lot of fan translations. So I was like, okay, I feel good. I'm not like necessarily sailing the seven seas on like a work that I feel like is deserved to be paid for. And eventually I paid for like the English translations because I wanted the books on my shelf. But that's besides the point. So when it comes to manhwa recaps, right? A huge portion of them are all made by the same person. Not necessarily the same person. They're made by like how do I explain this? Also, Lemon, Pigeon. Hi, Spartan. Thank you for the hand pats. Thank you. But what I mean by this, right, is that like when it comes down to manhwa recaps, what is very iffy for me is that I want to be a like I just don't want to consume content without thinking about it, if that makes sense, to like some degree, because with the new changes with YouTube, with the new changes of like any platform when it comes to content creation, I feel like as a, person who does content as well to some degree, I feel like I should be more aware of these things. And, as someone who has always tried to support my favorite creators, whether it be in like, I don't know, watching with ads, pain, honestly, pain. But like at least my favorite creators, like making sure that I like interact with them and like to some degree write a comment on like my main profile or whatever, or like I don't know, shared a video, things like that I really like the original creators that I watch. And even for like smaller creators, I try not to like I try not being stingy with my likes, bro. I try not to be stingy, right? I'm so stingy with my subscription, but like I'm not stingy with my likes. Let's see. If I'm a beginner in art, because I'm really am buffering. I don't know what you're referring to. I genuinely don't know what you're referring to. Yeah, being a beginner in art is completely fine. But basically, what I'm getting at is when it comes to manga recaps, it toes the line of me being weird or feeling weird about watching them because I know a huge portion of them can be labeled as slop content. And it's getting harder and harder to find like creators who actually give a shit about what they're talking about. And what I mean by this is just like not even the visuals, but just the script itself, where I'm like, okay, like how much of this did you actually write? How much of this did you actually write, or did you just shove this into the robot and have it spit it back at me? Because for me, the allure of it is that I hate trying to find the source material. I hate having to like go to 17 different websites and try to find the manhwa, right? And then risk getting a virus. That's what I personally hate about like reading manhwa. So I really enjoy the recaps. However, if they're not being consistent in the way that they're telling the story, if they're not like, you know, it's okay if you have like maybe one like random, okay, that's a little bit weird. Like, oh my God, they use the wrong pronoun. I'm like, okay, probably they're not, like English is probably not their first language. And that's why they're relying on like a text-to-speech type of voice, right? And, you know, maybe they got the pronouns mixed up. Okay, that's very plausible. But once it starts being a recurring pattern, or once there's like wrong descriptions for things, I'm like, okay, you just said this into the robot, didn't you? And you just let it fly. So I try to support more creators who do the recaps, but they actually talk about what they're talking about. They actually provide some sort of commentary or some like warmth to it, if that makes sense. Because I think a lot more content that I see on YouTube is slop content, where it's like not a lot of effort is put into it. And especially with something like a recap, it's like, oh, it's very debatable about how much work you put into it. But that's just like my general thoughts on manhwas, that I feel weird about listening to some creators because they all use the same voice, they also use the same backgrounds, pacing in a sense. Like if you show me 10 videos from 10 different creators who do manhwa recaps, I for the life of me can't tell you which one is which. Besides the point of the people who I watch who like actually have some semblance of like speaking, like actually speaking into the microphone with their own voice. And these are like creators who have teams or like have at least more than one person working on the video. But you get into like a touchy space with that too, because there's not a lot of people who do that, like who do manhwa recaps or anime recaps or whatever, who have a likable personality, if I'm being honest, at least for me. Because I'll be listening to a recap or like them talking about a specific anime, right? And they're like, we're having a good time, we're chilling out. But then they say something weird and I'm like, bro. Like, for example, commenting on, it was such like a random comment that I don't think was the biggest deal, but gave me an ick. So I'm like, oh, I don't really want to watch this video anymore. Like commenting on the body size of a child. Like, oh my God, like she's kind of fat in this, dude. And I'm like, yo, she's 10, bro. Like, I don't know if I really want to watch your video now, dude, because that's weird. Because it's relying on the what do you call it? Dick humor, if that makes sense. Like being a dick. Where I'm like, oh, there was no need for this, dude. Like I don't want to watch this anymore. Which really sucks because then it's like I don't even have a lot of people to watch in the beginning. So it's like, damn. So hi Takio. Nice nephew. Facts. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm like, oh my God, am I contributing to the slot problem on YouTube? Oh God. Which leads into our first video, actually. Let's get into it. Here, let me put it on. I've been yapping long enough, and then I do want to draw something at least. Something at some point, right? But let me go find the video. There was a video that was recently released by a creator who was talking about the state of manhwa, and I was very interested in it, so I just bookmarked the video and I was like, okay, we'll react to this on stream. So how I'm going to be doing reactions is that we are going to listen to the video, like both of us together. We're going to listen to the video, right? However, we're not gonna see the video. We're not actually gonna look at the video, just because it's gonna turn into like a it's gonna turn to a PowerPoint slide if I put it on. So let me go ahead and pause my music real quick and we'll set things up. Let's see. So we got a rant about the state of manhwa by ILU Heavy Rain. So listen to a few videos while we draw together, and I'll pause it and we can talk about it real quick. So let me just set things up on the side real quick. Let's go to art. And then let's go to this one. Where is my window capture? This one. There we go. And let me put the creators. Actually, I might just screenshot it real quick. Or maybe I should put the... I never know which is better. Putting the title of the video by the creator on the actual stream, or just putting a screenshot of the video and stuff. That might be better. But it does take me more effort. See image. There we go. Let me make sure there's no... There we go. There's no background music playing in the background. All right. Now let's get going, bro. Let's get going.
But first, I want to mention that this video will be structured entirely. Over the past 2 months, I have read over 29, plus a few extras, of your manga recommendations. And this is part 2 of an originally 35-minute video that I split in half. And this has been a fairly entertaining experience. But first, I want to mention that this video will be structured entirely different from the first half. You see, I want to mention a manhwa I actually gave a second chance, and that is SSS Class Revival Hunter, because originally in the first video I rated this a 0 out of 10, and I still believe that this was a fair rating in all honesty. But I also want to bring up this comment here to confirm that yes, I am biased, but this is because I believe that the system window is the worst thing to ever happen to all manhwa and manga. To me, the...
Oh, that's so interesting, actually. Yeah, because this is the thing, right? Most manhwa, I feel like, have some semblance of a system window where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna do grinding of levels. We're going to like progress the story through this, and it's kind of a half and half if you're going actually. It's kind of a half and half if you're actually going to get a system window, whether even if it's not even an isekai, because sometimes they use the system window for like people who are not even like traveling into a different world or got reincarnated into a different body. It's just like, oh, this random character in this alternate universe or in this specific universe has a system window now due to like XY reasons.
The system window is lazy. I see this as an excuse to not put any real thought into how characters actually get their abilities, or how they grow in them, or the many things that exist in fantasy worlds. An example is how typically the system window allows its characters to store things within it as if it were an inventory. But something like this isn't needed because, in my opinion, there are many ways to ground an inventory into both the world and the story, such as a bag of holding from D&D, which is a magical bag that can hold lots of things as if it were endless on the inside. If an author gave this to the character, I wouldn't question it at all because it's understandable that something like this would exist in a world where magic does. And the same goes for skill-based stories because I won't dare call something like this a power system. To me, a power system is a foundation regardless of whether it's a hard or soft system.
Also on that, the thing about system windows that I think personally for me that is annoying because for system windows, I don't really care if I'm being completely honest with you. And this is the thing is when it comes to manhwa, it is very hard for people to completely commit, if that makes sense. So a lot of times when system windows are actually implemented in like a manhwa specifically, very often or not, they're just forgotten. They're like for example, they'll introduce this like the system window saying like, okay, the author wants you to go throughout the story in the original format, and if you I don't know, if you meet these three conditions or these certain conditions, you can break away from the system, right? And what was originally such an interesting story mechanic and being like, okay, well, you have these restrictions, you can't just do whatever you want. And how are you going to play with those restrictions, right? Very quickly, the system window is completely thrown out, or like any sort of game mechanic. Like, for example, there was this very specific manhwa that I was reading about this girly pop who ended up getting transmigrated into a story, right? The usual like isekai manhwa thing. The thing with her is that she had a semblance of affection meters for a lot of the characters. So she's like, okay, for me to survive, I got to make sure that everyone likes me bare minimum because she started off with a negative bar. So a lot of people hated her. In order for her to stay alive, she needed to have some semblance of having someone who like liked her in general, as well as like eventually find one male lead who will end up marrying her. And then she'll be fine. Then she'll be safe. She won't die. But very quickly in the story, the system window just disappeared and we just didn't see it anymore. Or like the affection meter no longer applied, where it was introduced in the beginning, used maybe one or two times, and then eventually thrown away. So it felt as though, why did you even need to include that in the first place? Well, like it was very interesting. It made sense, but you didn't really utilize it for every not necessarily every interaction, but it just felt second thought. Like, oh, I'm just gonna throw this in there and not really think about it.
Power systems all have their own innate internal logic and style of progression, which shapes how characters receive their powers. Skills in this context are always the same in these general settings. They're always one-off singular abilities that do one or two things depending on how rare they are. Authors that use skills typically ignore or don't explain how these skills are gained, or the reason is related to experience points or innate talent, or the character simply awakening, which is consistently seen in stories that involve hunters, gates, and the system window, which is what I find lazy. I
Also, thank you for the care package, Takio. Thank you, thank you.
like the explanation of a system rules. I enjoy learning how a character gets stronger and the reasons they are at the same time they do. In stories that use the system window and hunter grades skip past this or outright don't have it at all. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 10,000. Thank you. This same thing is of course present in Revival Hunter. The only quirk or novelty is how the main character actually acquires these skills, which is by dying. A skill he gained at the beginning of the story called I Want to Be Like You allows him a random skill from an enemy who kills him. But this randomness is discarded later anyways, as he gets another skill that just allows him to choose which one he wants. And this is that laziness and lack of internal logic that I'm talking about, and is present in many similar stories. Many of these hunter main characters always receive an X factor or cheat skill or just the system window in order to completely shirk their progression. It's the main reason why I gave it a 0 out of 10 last time. It's not like I don't see the appeal of the system window or the general idea behind it. People who read these manga enjoy the idea of getting dropped into a video game world, and they're able to live and interact with it as if they're still playing the game by upgrading their stats, getting a class, and leveling up skills. I understand the thought process, but I truly do prefer to see real training and a real power or magic system in play when reading an action fantasy story.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like there was this huge boom of manhwa, especially like action manhwa, that was primarily based on necromancy, right? Where it's like, okay, well, why would I have one specific power when I can just have a bunch of servants or a bunch of other characters who will have a variety of powers that I can take advantage of? Where it's like, okay, like when I first saw it, when I first saw this idea, interesting. When I saw it a second time, I'm like, okay, well that makes sense. Like, I like that. Third time, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. There's so many manhwas that I can think of who have the same semblance of like, okay, we're having this edgy, dark haired character who has necromancy powers to some degree at various levels, and we're gonna pit them against crazy odds and they're going to overcome things very easily. That's why when it comes to the isekai genre, it's a genre that I very much enjoy, whether it be an anime, whether it be a manhwa, because I like the potential, what they could do with that story setup, right? I'm always a believer of potential, and I very much enjoy maybe the beginning of the story, like their origin story, or what challenges they faced, how they got their powers, etc., etc., and what they're going to do. It's an interesting setup. However, very quickly you get into this kind of same milestones, if that makes sense. Okay, well, they're gonna get their first wife, they're gonna get their second wife, third wife, and then eventually they're gonna have the adopted child that they take care of. And as soon as I get the adopted child, I step out. I step out. I can't do this because that's one trope in anime and manhwa and manga that I hate, is just the adopt a child trope. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. It's not because I hate children. It's not because that I have a dislike for family concepts or like found family or anything like that. The reason why I dislike it is because they are used as a prop. The child in the story is used as a prop, pretty much like a handbag. So, for example, when it comes down to them being like, well, we need the child to motivate him or her to do something. So we gotta put someone in this place that they're not going to fall in love with because they already have X amount of lovers, X amount of like romantic interests. So we'll just throw a child in there. And so they, adopt the child or whatever, and they take care of the kid, but they're not necessarily taking care of them. Usually they hand it off to one of their many spouses or love interests, and then that person takes care of them. And so you're basically like, oh, I saved this child, but you're not really going to interact with them other than like a few moments that are like very celebratory, where it's like, oh my god, we saved this village, or like we did this thing. And then it's like cuts to like the family dynamic of having like all of the wives or all of the husbands or whatever, and then the child's there as a little accessory being like, oh my god, papa, mama, or whatever. It's lazy, and I hate it. I genuinely hate it because there's no point. The kid doesn't need to be there. The kid really doesn't need to be there, and they're just used as like either a semblance of like, I do this for my child that I got off the street one on a whim or whatever, who I don't even take care of, or it's like they're used as a prop of like, just, oh, I'm a very successful man, I have all these wives, I have all these children, I'm such a cool guy, and I've gone through all these troubles, and I have all this success, and they're not treated as their individual person. They're not treated as an actual character. They're treated as a handbag. Like, oh look, kid checked off the list. You know, it's very to me. I hate it. I really hate it.
Which Revival Hunter doesn't really have. And I'll tell you right now, it's not a 0 out of 10 for me anymore, but without lying to you, its new rating hasn't really improved much. This is because during this reread, it hasn't shown me anything really new from typical Hunter stories, which is primarily what I was looking for during my reading of these 29 stories. It does at least use the system window in a different manner by allowing it to have some more non-combative, more video gamey aspects at times, but the first two arcs really don't help this story, and it's also totally, technically, a regression story, which I don't like either, because all regression stories are basically written the same. This guy goes back in time pretty far to kill someone who killed him, and then his whole life magically improves from then on. He's making connections with people he couldn't or envied in his previous life, which is all that's ever possible in regression stories. I'm dead ass. Think about every regression story you've ever read and convince me that this isn't what every regression MC doesn't do bar for bar. His goal is to live a life being acknowledged by the guildmasters, as in, I suppose, the other timeline. He lived his life wanting to be a legendary hunter, and he ends up achieving this, and this is part of that acknowledgement.
I agree to some degree. I agree to some degree. It is very annoying when just one change completely makes the life better. It's really annoying. What I like about regression stories is when they continuously fail. For example, one story off the top of my head is this girly pop who ends up regressing every single time at random, if that makes sense. Like she regress at random times, it feels like, where it's like, did I die? What happened? I don't really know, but I guess I just died. As soon as I walk out, I guess I just perish. Because she was trying to leave the sanctuary of like the church or whatever. And apparently, whenever you leave the church, what ends up happening is that you're hunted down and called a witch. So most of the time, whenever you leave the church, they'll just hunt you down and kill you at least some point in your life. So she was like, oh, maybe it ended really quickly because, you know, like, yeah, I lived, but, if I walk out of this like little barrier, maybe I just die. And so she kept trying and trying and trying and trying again in order to escape the church. And she realized as she continues to like make attempts or run away or do something, she dies at really random spots, or she's like regresses, I should say. And we later on find out that the reason why that is that her fate is tied to the original characters. So she's not the main character of the story. Her husband is, or not her husband. The main lead is basically. So he is a regressor. Every time he dies, she dies as well, regardless if she lives or not. Like she could be perfectly fine one day and say he blows up in like a gas explosion or something, and he regresses back to his original timeline. She does as well, regardless if she's alive or not, which is very fascinating. Another one can be, for example, I was reading this one where this girly pop, she ends up getting transmigrated into the story, and she ends up getting time regress as well. So she goes along the plot of the story of being very nice, being very caring, and loving the character who ends up massacring her whole family because he's like a servant that was treated very badly due to, racism and discrimination. And eventually, once he gets his powers, he decides to murder the entire state. So she ends up trying to be nicer to him, trying to be kinder to him, love him genuinely, get angry at anyone who would harass him. And at the very end, when he murders everyone and he like talks to her, he ends up choking her to death also, regardless, because she loved him. She genuinely loved him. She genuinely cared about him, but he still killed her in the end. And so she regresses and she realizes, well, if I'm nice to him, if I'm cruel to him, nothing changes. So she's like, I might as well just be neutral and then try to get this asshole out of my life as soon as possible. So she's begging her father that to get rid of the servant, to, place him somewhere else, give him money. And she gives him opportunity after opportunity to run away, to get out of here. She's not necessarily being nice to him. Maybe she'll like be nice to him on like a random whim, right? Giving him a piece of candy that she didn't want. You know, getting after the servants for being mean to him. But she didn't treat him in a kind manner. She didn't meet him, like she didn't necessarily, how do I explain this? She wasn't nice to him, but she wasn't mean to him. She would look at him and see him for who he is, like as a like he she would see him as a person, but she always knew that eventually he's gonna turn evil and kill people. He's gonna turn evil and be a menace basically. So she just didn't want him to remember anything about her. And it made it sort of such an interesting dynamic because once it gets to the time in the story where the massacre is gonna occur, things completely derail from that. And the reason is because of how she treated him. She's like, he's like, I don't. She's like, I don't really understand why you didn't just kill me. I don't really understand why things happen this way because he's towing the line of being like obsessed with her approval, but also being very angry and very hurt by his current situation, which is like how he was raised or his experiences growing up, being weak, and now he's like, you know, macho or whatever. So that I found such a more interesting that I found as a much more interesting dynamic than the stereotypical just okay, well, uh they make one new move and it completely changes. Or never another one like there's manhwa about this girl who ends up regressing. I don't even remember how many times she lived so many different lives, being a doctor, being a merchant, um, running away to a whole different country and learning that language. And as she continues to progress, well, as she continues to regress, she's always killed due to a war that like the main character starts. In some way, shape, or form, she dies because of the war. She can't get away from it. She like even tried moving to a whole different country who didn't even have any input into the war, and she still dies time after time after time. Even though she's gaining all these abilities, even though she's gaining all this knowledge, it doesn't help until eventually she ends up making a very interesting, what do you call it? Very interesting choice at the banquet that gains the attention of the person who starts the war, and so that leads to them getting married. So now she's closest, now she's the closest she's ever been to the person who ends up killing her in every lifetime, which makes for a much more interesting dynamic because it makes sense. It makes sense why she has all these abilities. It makes sense why she's able to have all this knowledge because she lived so many years. Like she lived so many lifetimes. And now this is just the lifetime where it's a combination of all of those different skills, all of those different sets of knowledge, right? So I can see where he's coming from when it comes with talking about manhwa because I love reading romance manhwa, but I also like reading action manhwa. I, I love I love reading the manhwa. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'll even read dark romance, a genre that I specifically hate. I hate dark romance, but I'll read it in manhwa if they make it interesting. I do not care about the romance. That's not what I'm here for. He's evil. He's evil. I do not like him, etc., etc. But what I like is the dynamics or where they're going with the story. Because there are some times that I've read manhwas that there is no way that you can spin this into being a loving story. Like there's literally no way. And I love seeing them try. Also, hi unknown. Hello DJ Backshots. How you doing? We're reacting to manhwas and it just ended up me being it just ended up me talking about manhwas.
But these present elements in these first two arcs still dim the story down as a whole. In chapter 32, declares that he wants to protect those around him and that he wants to be better than Flame Emperor. And he's redoing this fight with a boss over and over again in order to make sure that everyone lives, which you guys mentioned to be the moment the author locks in, which does feel slightly redundant, but it is where these stories' existing characters begin showing a lot more emotional depth. The Guildmasters begin displaying actual personalities and character quirks that make them seem like more than just figureheads, like the Witch of the Black Dragon and how she cares about the amount of casualties, making him soft reset in order to change her reaction to the amount. And then in chapter 34, he receives a skill called 100 Ghost Summons, which is totally not helping this series case. Even though he doesn't use it the same way, at least where I am currently, this is making him seem extremely similar to one particular character I know. And then in chapter 35, he gets this corny title calling him the King Who Reaps Death. Like, are we serious right now? Like,
That is so true. Some of these titles, like, I have to blame probably translations, is where it's like, okay, why is this why is this a thing? But I'm like, okay, you know, I gotta be a little bit forgiving because again, a lot of the manhwas, like what 99% of them are like written in Korea. Some of them are from like international artists or international authors. Very rarely it's going to be like someone who has a very robust knowledge of English. So that in a sense of also like depending on what translation you get, whether it's fan translation or officially translated, the names are gonna be a little wonky. So I try not to be I try not to be too judgmental. I was afraid, LMAO.
is this your guys's like ultimate story? Like, this is what you're reading on a Friday night, you get off work, and this is what you decide to read? One of the highlights of the series, according to
Hey, I love my slop. I love my slop, okay?
you guys, is supposedly where I am in this Muram zombie arc, which I do think started off pretty good, and there's tons of emotional and character complexity, mainly showcased from the sect leaders and their resilience to remain loyal to their disciples in this arc, which is a real jump from the first two arc. But here's the thing, I had a friend who helped me write this script. You know, they looked over it, and with their very keen eyes, they told me to stop underselling my opinion. So you know what? This shit sucks. This isn't nearly good enough for me to read it twice and magically say, oh my goodness, it's so much better than I initially thought. But I'll be honest, reading this again and further only made me dislike it more. I know how to hate it more efficiently now. And what's worse is that I read something I liked more while writing this script, being a manhwa called Island of Stars and Chains, which is wildly enough an urban fantasy hunter manhwa. But I like many things about this manhwa. Its art is wonderfully unique and colorful, the MC is actually an underdog and stays one. It's turned what I would consider typical hunter manhwa stuff into an actual power system with rules and categories that detail explicitly how characters' powers function, which is the best part about it. There are 5 classes in this manhwa. The first is Sentinel. These guys are like a classic warrior, and the manhwa even explains them that way. Next is Summoner, which is actually what the MC is, but they can summon weapons that are unique to them with a special power of its own. Next is Hexmage, which can imbue mental energy into objects and control them. They can even cause hallucinations, but they need like a wand or a medium to actually do it. Next is the Spirit Mage, and they can summon and command spirits like this guy who controls water, and created this amazing scene. It's cool because this manhwa actually explains that the spirits have a mind of their own and how this class is different from a hex mage. Lastly is Mattersmiths, who can use these tomes with specialized equations to manipulate materials around them. These classes run off a pretty typical hunter grade and inner force foundation, but it's so simple because through this medium, characters can actually have interesting abilities and unique ways of growing stronger. And what's even cooler is that there's another form of power present in this manhwa called Homecomers, whose minds or physical bodies went to another realm and fight basically that realm's equivalent of a demon king, and they come back keeping those powers from then, and Homecomers are way stronger than average hunters. It's just something like on the side that's really cool. If it wasn't a hunter manhwa, I'd give it a 10 out of 10, but it's a cool 7 because it's also quite funny and references a lot of movies and memes. Revival Hunter is a cool 5 out of 10, and I wasn't lying to you guys when I said I was starting to like it. This wasn't a lie, trust. But this is nowhere near the best of everything I've read. reading all these manhwa has only cemented something I had already suspected. Something very crucial, and it's definitely an opinion that could ruffle some of you guys' feathers. But action fantasy manhwa as a whole may, as I say, may never have a story as good or as complex as Bleach, which I know isn't really fair, and
I'm shook. I'm genuinely. Oh, okay. Oh my god.
only using it as a benchmark because I've read it twice and watched it. Bleach has been around for 24 years. It's had time for people to analyze its qualities and finer narrative aspects and really judge it in comparison to other shonen manga. So you really can't not only compare all of action fantasy manhwa to it, but you also can't use it as a good baseline for individual stories. But my main point here is that the bar for manhwa, to me, specifically to me as an opinion, is very, very low. And that's not
I agree. I agree. And the thing about it, right, is I feel like the reason why it's low, right? I think that the bar is very low for manhwa is just because of the influx of it. I think there's just so many manhwas, and this is partially because of people's dreams, right? People want to release their own manhwa, people want to release their own comic, so they're able to do self-publishing. But also there's the other side of it where once you have money involved in anything, of course it's going to be more popular. Of course, people are going to make more content for it. However, where the problem lies is people trying to make a living off of it. And we've seen it in many different aspects, right? Where people are living on like cents, like really low fares, how much money their manhwa makes, right? They're living in poverty basically. It's really unfortunate. It's really sad, but they're living paycheck to paycheck, and especially with something like art, you're unable to get a livable wage due to it not being the standard 9 to 5 job. So a lot of people are more willing to write isekai fantasy stories that are not fleshed out, who don't necessarily have a lot of like interesting aspects to it, right? They're just trying to live, guys. They're just trying to make ends meet. So they're trying to, okay, well, this story did well, isekai did well. Well, I'll just write an isekai. It's fine. Let me just go in, write this, and get some money, and get some bread in order for me to live, and then dip out. And a lot of these companies also see the popularity of isekais type of manhwas or regression or anything like that, so they're like, okay, well, bet, well, then let me just uh dip my toes and have a lot of my authors, a lot of my signed talents to make isekai or make regression stories, make what's popular, get these selling like hotcakes, and then we'll abandon the project. So I think it's a lot of that makes a lot of bar for manhwa to be in the ground. To be like, because like for me, I distinctly really remember whenever there's any manhwa that I've seen who has any semblance of having an interesting story. Most of the time I can't remember the title, but I can at least remember the looks of the characters and the premise of the manhwa, right? And the reason for that also is just because a lot of there's a lot of debate on translation. So like, oh, well, the title's actually this or the title's actually that. So you'll find in many cases manhwa going by multiple different titles or like multiple different interpretations. But I agree on that. The fact that like manhwa is at a lower bar in a sense of quality. Not for like dissing artists, but just the unfortunate aspect of it being a lucrative business and people not necessarily putting in the same amount of time, effort, and love because they got to make ends meet. They gotta put food on the table.
to say that some stories aren't exceptional. It's just that they'll always be at the top, the tippy top of this very low bar compared to the very high bar that is manga. Both mediums of course share pros and cons because they're both a comic medium, the biggest thing being tropes. Both manhwa and manga have tropes that do consistently reappear in the series you may read. In both mediums, the idea of an overpowered character, or in even more recent instances, regression and isekai, saturate the current scene, which I don't really have to dive into because it's self-explanatory, but this is an easy segue into an opinion I voiced in previous videos, that people are going to make what works, and in turn, this lessens the amount of potentially unique stories. I want to talk about a manga called Alien Headbutt that was axed, and I also want to bring up a manga that was serialized at the same time called Kinato's Magic. Alien Headbutt was a story about a man named Toga who wanted to be a wrestler, and he became one and went back to his home island only to find it overrun with aliens. He becomes infected with a parasite that makes him much stronger than the average human, so now he can compete with aliens using his own specialized wrestling techniques. Pretty amazing but distinct concept for a story, but it's the same uniqueness that inevitably got it axed because it wasn't a typical setup that people could easily settle into. Where on the other hand, you have Kinato's Magic, which I'll say outright, it is a very typical kind of story. Kinato leaves his humble home in order to become an adventurer with a childhood friend of his and joins what is essentially the story's equivalent of the Magic Knights. And this is basically his story of how he becomes more confident and a lot stronger so far. This setup is very comfortable, which is why it's still around. But you know what's hilarious? It's actually not still around because I found out while editing this video that it actually was axed. I literally just found out while editing, which is extremely frustrating. So my entire point literally doesn't even matter now. The situation creates what I want to call a sort of feedback loop in which there's only so much inspiration that can be drawn from reading all these stories with comfortable setups. So people will only write things that are similar and won't write anything new. Not only because this is all they know, but also because the audience won't be comfortable with anything new, which is why manhwa as a medium is saturated with the system, necromancy, villainess stories, tycoon manhwa, regression, Muram stories, ranked hunters, noble house settings, and reincarnation. All of these overused tropes are the result of this feedback loop, and manga is of course the same way. But that's enough of that. I'm sure you guys aren't here to hear me rant about my dislike of manhwa. You're here because you want to hear about your recommendations. See, I decided to structure this video differently. Rather than each story getting its own segment, the manhwa will be grouped together based on their qualities. So for example, all the medieval fantasy stories are now one group and they will supplement this rant.
Also, hello, welcome on in. We're listening to a YouTube video. How are you?
Modern fantasy manhwa, or urban fantasy as I really should say, can always end up being the same. And by modern fantasy, I mean stories that take place in modern day Korea or somewhere else. And typically it's a hunter manhwa, which is genuinely heartbreaking. But you guys have recommended manhwa which break the mold very well, and a benchmark for this is Hand Jumper. Hand Jumper is genuinely an amazing story, and I'm like a real sucker for this kind of albeit familiar setup. I may even be perpetuating my statement from earlier, but in Hand Jumper, the world is full of aberrants, which are humans that can manipulate the essence within them to strengthen, heal, and even use a special gift, which is a power unique to them. Aberrants are hated by everyone, even the main character whose sister just so happens to be one, and it's also revealed that being one is genetic. So Seon Lee, our main character, is forced to join the Aberrant Corps. It's a pretty entertaining ride from then on. Seon Lee is a very, very good main character with some real depth and quirks, unlike typical manhwa protagonists. And like I said, I'm a real sucker for this type of story. For me, it really sets the standard for all modern fantasy manhwa. The other stories like Dungeon Odyssey, Shamanism, Chiosu Saves the World, and The Warrior Returns, and A Mark Against Thee, which are all definitely enjoyable series. Dungeon Odyssey with the way it handles the labyrinth and how people explore it. Shamanism is a very weird but cool mix of concepts between shamanism and stock trading, as shamans use their powers in order to sway the stock market. I don't know how anybody like came up with that, but that's actually like really cool, and it was actually something.
Oh wait, I read that. Yeah, it was interesting. I like the setup where it's like yeah, like what basically he said is that, you know, when it comes to any sorts of shamans or like traditional sort of medicine, it's used as a political aspect where it's like, okay, well, if I can have the shaman uh cast some sort of protection on my business, things will go well. And there are these giant corporations who are willing to pay top dollar, as well as unfortunately threaten a lot of the people who practice. So it's very interesting.
Something I put on this list because I wanted to share it with you guys. And Chiosu, with how he fosters new connections every time to achieve his goal, and the warrior returns with reverse isekai being a phenomena, and the variety of heroes is a real standout to me. A Mark Against Thee has its own emotional realism that is present in other stories like Windbreaker, and it's really good, but one that really lacked in comparison was Player, and the only reason it's here is because of the type of isekai it is. It just really didn't stand out in any way to me. Next is medieval fantasy, which is somewhat self-explanatory. It's just a story that takes place in a somewhat medieval world with knights, a king, or nobles. Stories like this can also always have some pretty typical elements, but quite a few of these are standouts. I'd say they even stand at the top of that very low bar I mentioned earlier. They even kind of stand above it, if I'm being honest. The standout for this group is actually kind of undecided because all three I'll mention I like a whole lot, but for different reasons. Not only that, they all have the same one reason. These standouts are Stellar Swordmaster, Ember Knight, and Happy Face. All three of these manhwa share themes of being a knight and have a knight's code or swordmaster's code, which actually has a presence within the story and influences the choices characters make, which is a very satisfying element. Happy Face stands out for its character growth, connections, and choreography. William and Happy are two amazing main characters with different origins, but they make great friends and there are a lot of cool fights. Stellar Swordmaster also has great character growth, but what stood out to me most was how they managed to turn aura, magic, and holy power into an actually complex system, and it was also the first manhwa that showed me the Swordmaster's code. Ember Knight stands out for its choreography, the presence and nature of knights within the story. It really goes in depth into how power and what people choose to do with it matter, and even how weakness can be a weapon and how its main character has different strengths. All three of these are fighting for the benchmark spot as I continue to read them. The other story that's by no means bad but I do really enjoy but isn't close to my top three is Warrior Executioner, which I really like because it actually gives a grounded in universe reason for people having skills, which is what I mentioned earlier. In this world, the goddess granted people two different types of skills so they can hold their own against the other races, and there's romance. Listen, man, I really like a good romance subplot.
Let's go. Let's go. I do love me a good romance. Even if it's a subplot. Honestly, it's really good.
Because it allows me to be part of something I can't have myself. But there are two that I really don't like, and the first is Steel Emperor, which was just a huge letdown. It's one of those stories where the main character is reborn as someone else, but it has one unique element in its Gagans, which are cool giant knight mechs, but they aren't the main focus, which sucks. I wish the story was more so about being like an artificer, but it just isn't. It's just a typical reincarnation manhwa. But this next one, I didn't dislike it, but also didn't enjoy it as much as the other. The Reincarnation of the Veteran Soldier is a very comedic isekai story, and at times well drawn, but it's just not super funny to me. But I am going to keep reading this one as I'm just not super far into it. And the last one in this particular category that isn't Murum, because Murum is going to be its own segment, but On My Way to Meet Mom doesn't really fit into either of these groups, but it is a pretty actually funny story and wholesome. It's a short story, but it's like ongoing right now. I think it's like monthly, about this really pretty much young toddler leaving his orphanage to find his real mother, and in the outside world he has met with many unique creatures and other non-human characters with great designs. I actually quite like it. And
Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you, the intense music is killing me. Every single segment. It's
lastly is the Murum recommendations, and I have some very big and frustrating words for the Murum genre as a whole, and I want to come out of the gate and say that Legend of the Northern Blade is the best Murum manhwa out of all the others, and I believe I have a really good reason for this. You see, Murum stories are their own type of fantasy, different from high fantasy or any other type of fantasy, being the core of a martial arts fantasy with flashy moves, big flashy names, and generally the idea of a cool group of martial artists. Why do you think movies like Karate Kid and Kung Fu Hustle are really good movies? It's because these two movies capture that martial artist fantasy, and Legend of the Northern Blade captures this essence, literally becomes this martial artist fantasy, and it does that through the art, because this art looks so sick and picture book-esque and ancient. Reading this felt like I was reading a movie. This scene in the rain from chapter 37 where two characters are standing off has so much tension. You can literally feel the tension oozing off the page, especially with the rain and how the panel was angled. It was this fight that made me fall in love with Legend of the Northern Blade, and it's not that, it's mainly because there's an actual story here that is explained from the very beginning. And to cut it short, Jin's father was betrayed and his entire sect was destroyed. He spent time training and now he's searching for someone close to him. I said that really fast, I apologize. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I explained it that way because you just have to read it for yourself, and there's many background elements at play during the story as well, making it a really deep story. The next two are also really fun stories because they support that martial artist fantasy in a really unique way, because their stories simply just take place in a Muram world. Gosu is really resemblant of an old colored manga. It seriously reminds me of early Dragon Ball with its comedic nature, and its earlier chapters are kind of like an anthology where the MC Gang Ryong delivers food to people and ends up in various situations. Gang Ryong,
I would like to say that I really like the visuals of the comics, or like the visuals of the manhwa that's being shown, because it's really nice to actually see the artwork and like see some panels instead of just like for example, he's scrolling through the entire panel, which is like up and down. And I think that's really nice because most of the time it's just like one picture of the main character, another picture of a side character. So
Song is really strong but kind-hearted, making for an ultimately satisfying story, and the action is really good as well. As for the third, being Peerless Dad, which has a not really similar situation. I don't know why I wrote this in the script, but the main character No Gajang was training under a master who said he'd never become strong, so he spent most of his life as a mercenary until he found the love of his life. But he unfortunately ends up as a single father of 3 and decides to join a sect so he can get welfare benefits, a free education, and a house close to his job, which I'm sure some of you probably want. I'm sure some of you probably really want that. But Peerless Dad is a really heartwarming story and a funny series. There are a lot of details I'm leaving out, but it's, once again, like I said, a great story because it simply just takes place in a Muram world without having any X factors like regression or reincarnation. If anything, the X factor is the fact that this dude is a single father. And like I said, all 3 of these are great examples of that martial arts fantasy. But that brings me to my next opinion, and that's that none of the other Muram stories capture this martial arts fantasy. None of them. Look, I know a lot of you like Return of the Blossoming Blade, and I'll admit, I did really like the way the story emphasizes the love and importance of Mount Hua rather than throwing it away. But all this made me realize that it's just another one of those tycoon manhwas where like somebody like comes back to life and they're like, oh no, my kingdom is in ruin, and then they build up the everything and then they talk to people. I talked about this all before, and this last part is slightly sloppy, but believe me. And I didn't realize it at first because it was just disguised as a cultivation manhwa, because this guy spends all his time cultivating chi, which is like an X factor that I didn't really talk about. I think I may talk about it, but I mean, I'm not sure. And Reincarnation of an Unruly Heir, I literally fell asleep reading this. You know, phones usually are pretty good.
oh no, bro, that's so bad. No, that it's oh, it is so unfortunate because there have been many times where I've also been reading a manhwa, or like I've been reading a story, right? And I'm like sitting there reading it, or like even listening to it, right? And I fall asleep and I'm like, damn, either I'm like really tired or this is really boring, and I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. Cuz most of the time I try to give manhwas a fair shot, so I try to actually read them and like kind of try to digest them. But when it really when it really boils down to it, I think whether or not you read action manhwa or read romance manhwa, because those are the two biggest genres in my opinion when it comes to manhwa. Maybe it goes like action versus romance, and then like the third one would be like horror. Any type of horror manhwa, right? But yeah, it's really demoralizing when you realize like, yeah, no, I actually fell asleep. Ugh. Ugh.
Good at keeping you up because you're forcing your brain to stay active with all the extra stimuli and whatnot. But I was trying to stay awake. I didn't, you know, usually you don't have to try to stay awake when you're staying up like that, but I was trying. I was attempting, struggling to stay awake reading this, and I just couldn't. I literally fell asleep reading this. Do you know what that means? That means that this was so ass It was so bad that it literally wasn't even giving me the quote unquote extra stimuli I needed to stay awake. That's how bad this was. I'm gonna cut to the chase. I think that I just like the stories without reincarnation or any typical manhwa X factors that they add in, so the other guys like Miss Might Mayhem, Absolute Regression, I don't even want to waste my time on. Listen, this video took a really long time to make, and if you made it literally all 21 minutes, you are like literally the best person ever. I'm gonna be really straightforward. This is like the last manhwa video I'll ever make. I don't like making manhwa videos because manhwa panels just suck to edit. I said it before, this is the last one I'm ever gonna make unless this video hits like, you know what, I won't even be like unless, but like in order for me to make one other one, I would literally have to like see like incredible growth. And I don't, it's not like I'm holding manhwa ransom from you guys. I'm just saying I don't ever want to make another one again. So like I'm not gonna make another one again, if that makes sense. Anyways, if you guys,
That's so real. That is so real, dude. That is so real. Because that's what I mentioned. That's what I mentioned is like I really like how he's actually scrolling through it, because when it comes to editing manhwa, many people will just like cut up the manhwa panels and just stick them on the screen because it is such an awkward format in order to make a long form video on. So I understand it, especially like this video probably took a lot of time to make in a sense of just the prep work of reading all these manhwas, because most of the manhwas I think that are mentioned are around like 70 chapters I want to think of. And yeah, you know, yeah, you're scrolling and it kind of doesn't really feel like that, but it does take time, and to actually sit there and process what you just read and how much you liked it, it does take some like brain power and some mental especially like script writing and things like that. So no, I think that's so fair.
enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget this:
Fear God, love Jesus.
Peace.
Peace.
In case I don't see you.
Nice. Yeah, no, good video. Good video. This was by I Love You Heavy Rain, I assume. But yeah, no, it was pretty good. Especially reading on those manhwas or having like some talk about just manhwas in general, I think is really nice. There you go. Well, I think I saw his original video actually. Let me go see. No, I did not. Never mind. I'm fake. I'm fake. No, his thumbnails are really good actually. Nice. Oh, should I? Hmm. Hmm. Hold on, give me a second. I'm trying to balance looking up uh something real quick. Cause I do like the artwork that we had so far. Where is my other video that I wanted to listen to? Oh, I should do the ending actually. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like this video as well, and please subscribe, or please consider subscribing. I'm very glad we're able to do this because I really enjoy I really enjoy manhwa. I don't know. I always read manhwa, but not. I think I've read manhwa for like at least I want to say 12 years, if not 10 years, 12 years. Yeah, okay. We're gonna do the next video. The next video is gonna be why Japanese girls fall for host clubs, which I think is pretty interesting because basically when it comes to host clubs, I didn't know that it was such a, how to explain this? Okay. Here, we'll go into like my overview of like my understanding right now of host clubs. So my understanding of host clubs at this very moment is I personally did not know that host clubs are more geared towards other people who live in the nightlife, if that makes sense. Yes, a lot of clientele are very rich Japanese women who make bank, right? And who want some sort of connection because I guess the stereotype in a sense is that if you're a very successful businesswoman, there is a high probability of you not what do you call it? There's a high probability of you not being able to have those sort of connections yourself, which is debatable in the sense of, it's I don't think the greatest look. I don't think it's the greatest look upon it, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I can see where people are making the connections. Here, let me fix this real quick. So the thing about the nightlife, I think what really made me so surprised learning more about it was just the overall aspect of, I guess, the overall outlook maybe would be the better way to explain it. The overall outlook. Just how unfortunate it is that there are many young ladies who get into debt over visiting hosts because one of the ploys apparently is that they have hosts go on dating sites and say that they're single in order to get clients, right? Okay, like girly pop, just please pay for a beer, like for me to get on the rankings, please. Like I love you. The whole guilt trippy, like, oh, help your boyfriend raise higher in the rankings so I can make more money, or just sit here and make it look like I have clients and things like that, and let your friends, things, that semblance of just rabbit hole, and how a lot of these girls who are very impressionable, especially if they're moving from like the countryside to living in Tokyo or living in whatever big city, like whatever big city, it's very unfortunate to see that because they want to be loved, because they want to have that sort of connection with someone, they are completely taking advantage of. It's really sad. It's really sad. And there's a lot more darker things about host clubs in a sense, especially like new Japanese government laws that are being in place. But I am not an expert on that, so I will leave that to the experts. Right now, we're going to listen to Why Japanese Girls Fall in Love with Host Clubs by Decadent.
Let's start with the real story of a girl who spent $200,000 on a host.
Also, I guess some side tangent on who Decadent is. Decadent was actually a host club. Like, he was the building itself. He knew everything that was happening in there. Yeah, no. He was a host club member. Um, he was a host club. He was a host. There you go. He was a host. And not to summarize the story, but just to give a quick overview, is that he ended up working there for a period of time just because he was interested in it and he wanted to learn more about, like, I guess, the industry, and just thought it would be a fun thing to do when he was younger. So this is just him making YouTube videos about his experience or talking about the subject in general because he was in the thick of it on the other side, because many of the stories that we hear are either from top hosts who make a lot of money, you know, doing what they do, who make tens of thousands of dollars, but we rarely ever hear the other side, if that makes sense, of like people who don't make that much amount of money, who end up being around or being those people who take advantage of the loneliness, of, young girls or women in general. So I think it's interesting to hear his perspective on it or hear him talking about it because, again, either you hear about the top hosts or you hear about, unfortunately, the victims of this industry.
To set some context, host clubs are places in Japan where girls can drink with male hosts, and the hosts get a percentage of the sales. Last year, there were new regulations put in place, but a year later, the industry continues to thrive. All of the following quotes will be translations from a Japanese interview with this girl, which I will link below. I've omitted most of the interview words throughout. At the start, the interviewer asks, I heard you spent $200,000 on a host, and I wanted to hear that story in a bit more detail. What kind of guy did you spend it on? The girl is called Mometan. Mometan says, well, his looks were really exactly my type. This was on social media, where I found his account, and I went to see him at the store, and we met like that. He used romantic tactics from the beginning, and things went super quickly. Like he bought me an engagement bracelet and quickly said, let's live together, and then he let me live with him, and things like that.
Yo, that is insane. That is insane. Yo, baby girl, let's get married.
And I pretty much completely believed him. I thought, I'm going to marry him. The day after we met, he bought us the engagement bracelets. The interviewer says, so he asked you to marry him the day you met? Momentan replied, yes, that's what happened. He was around the number 1 or 2 host at the club. The interviewer asks, even though you knew he was a host, you believed that you would marry him? She replies, yes, my mind was like a flower garden. He said I was very cute. He's like, you're really cute. Let's get married. Something like that. He was the same age as me. Maybe being the same age made it easier to believe him. The interviewer says, when did you realize he was lying about the marriage? Momentan says, after about 1 month. I said, if I'm your girlfriend, isn't it strange that I'm going to the store? And he said various things and said that if I don't go to the store, he can't make time for me. And if I spend money at the store, he will eventually return the favor. And it didn't completely make sense, but he kind of explained it all away. And I thought, oh. And even I thought this seemed off, but I liked him, so I said I understand. I bought a lot of champagne at the store. I only went once or twice a month, and the first time I'd spend just a few $100s. For example, if I went 2 times in a month, the first time I'd spend a few $100s, and the second time it would be on like the final day of the month when rankings are decided, and I'd spend like $10,000 or $15,000. He would give me presents and things like that.
$10,000 or $15,000? Holy shit, dude. 10 or 15,000? It makes me really sad because like in Japan they're not being paid uh like for example cost of living, right? They're not being paid buckets of money or anything like that. This is primarily coming from either their savings account or honestly their entire paycheck or even just them doing side jobs or selling a lot of the stuff that they already have, whether it be, merchandise or unfortunately, I guess a lot of their collectibles maybe. I don't know. Oh.
He would go on dates with me and created memories together for me. It was fun, and I felt happiness. I felt he wouldn't marry me, like that there was a 95% chance he wouldn't marry me, but I was like believing the remaining 5%. His behavior towards me became more and more crude, and that was quite sad. But I continued to like him, and I could only express my love with money, and he became more and more cold. But if I didn't spend money, I thought he would probably be even more cold towards me. I had thoughts, like if I continued to spend money, maybe he would become kind to me again. I had that kind of hope. The interviewer says, his behavior towards you was so rough, even though you were his biggest customer. Why do you think that is? I think pretty simply, he disliked me. I was overdosing around that time as well, so I think that took him aback. That's possible. On Christmas, as a Christmas gift, I wanted to buy champagne at the store for him, but because I liked him, I thought I wanted to do something more for him, like as a couple as well, and there was a cute, like Christmas-shaped cookie. I was going to buy the champagne, so I couldn't buy him an expensive present, so I bought the cute cookie and handed it to him at the entrance of the store, saying that this is my Christmas present. He opened it and looked inside and said, "What is this? I don't want this. I'll give this to an employee." This was quite a shock to me. I said I won't buy the champagne. I'm going home. And when I said that, he dragged me into the store, saying, "How dare you say that?" I was saying I won't go to the store and acting out, so he said, "You're acting out and embarrassing me, so go to the VIP seats." The VIP seats are these really expensive seats, and he pushed me into them, and we had a fight there, and he took my wallet and keys, and he took everything from inside my wallet.
Oh my god, dude. Uh, mm, mm.
And said, "I'll use this as the VIP fee." And he took my key, the spare key I had, and he handed me like $20 or $30 and said to go to a net cafe or something with this. After that, I went to the police and explained the situation. I had a pet cat at the time in the house that we shared, and it was my pet, so I had told him, "Can you at least just return the cat?" And he was like, "If you spend money." And I explained that situation to the police, and they went to the house with me and helped me gather all my things really quickly, and I was able to safely retrieve the cat, and I left carrying my luggage and my cat. I filed a police report, and they did.
Okay, I just want to say that people, I hate couples, or like not even couples. I hate partners who decide to have ransom over the animals that they have together. It's really shitty behavior. It's really I just It's awful behavior in general to say, "Hey, I'm not gonna give back the cat. Hey, I'm not going to do this or that." And usually the people who say this are not even the people who are the primary caregivers of the animal. It's usually the person who just wants to be spiteful and say like, "Hey, this is mine now. You can't have this anymore," because it gives them some semblance of power. And it's really unfortunate because it's not as though it's an object. It's not as though it's a couch or a TV or an Xbox or PlayStation, a computer or anything like that. It's literally a living being. So it's very unfortunate. And I'm glad that she was able to get them back.
Did an investigation but couldn't find enough evidence, and the investigation was ended. The police report was for forcibly being taken into the store and for taking money from my wallet and paying the store with it, mainly. The one thing I kind of can't forgive him for is taking the cat as hostage. I have some anger from that, but about everything else, all my memories before that are important treasures to me. Because I liked him. When I worked in host clubs, I grew to like almost all of the customers that I regularly interacted with. In the host clubs I was at, most of the customers at any given time were regular customers with varying cadences, some of them weekly or a few times weekly, some a few times each month, and some of them every day for a month straight. An employee who worked for the host club would assign seating for everyone in the club at all times. He was observing the many conversations at all times. There were over 20 hosts in the club, and he would assign hosts to help at the tables with customers that they got along with the most. So I was seeing many of the customers many times, sometimes on a daily basis. We weren't allowed to discuss anything deep or personal, and yet, during these shallow conversations, I was sometimes moved by a tender kindness that the customers would display towards me. I, who was just this new person there and a kind of foreigner, some would express a genuine concern for me. Other customers would hardly talk at all at the host club. They were extremely shy and obviously uncomfortable and not used to this type of environment, but they were bearing with it because their host had asked them to be there. They would nicely respond to my questions, doing their best to be polite and engage in conversation. I would also see this kind of kindness and care displayed to their assigned host and to others. The host would ask them to buy a bottle, and the girl would see how truly hardworking he is and buy it for him, often not expecting anything back, experiencing the feeling and reality of being someone who selflessly self-sacrifices and supports this hardworking person. I also noticed how hard many of the girls worked. Some of them would work basically as much as physically possible on most days of the week. What struck me is that I had never heard of women working this hard in this line of work for themselves. What I've heard of women.
Yeah, it's really unfortunately the truth of it, right? And I feel a lot for these girly pops. I feel a lot for these women because unfortunately it is very easy to be caught up in a relationship. And I feel like many of my friends who are women fall into this very often, I feel like, or like more than usual compared to my male counterpart friends. And I really feel for it because once you find a person who, like, example, like these are very young women who are like the highest demographic for this to happen to them, who move to a new city, who are lonely, who don't necessarily have a huge support system. And especially with the way that host club functions, there is more to host clubs than it is just like having a building on the side of the road. There are many times where you can see there are many instances where you can see promotions for a club, whether it be people handing out like tissues, and like they'll hand out tissues on the side of the street and invite women into go into their store. And these are people who stand in high busy traffic areas, whether it be in Shinjuku, whether it be in Shibuya, but also I've seen this in Shinokubo, which is like the unofficial Korean district, like Korean town district of, Tokyo. And I've seen this happen before where they'll give people out these little tissues of like showcasing either women hosts or male hosts and saying, hey, you should come visit. We'll like saying any sorts of like promotional deals or whatever, right? And they give them to foreigners, they give them to like pretty much anyone who looks as though they have money. So it is very unfortunate because when it comes to I guess relationships in general, it is very sad to see that people buy into this, not even a fantasy, like to want a connection, to be on any sort of dating app, to want to have a romantic relationship, to get into a relationship with a host, and then to not realize that, like, hey, this host isn't like this host has tons of other girlfriends. This host doesn't see you as a person, if that makes sense. But it's hard to get this through your own head, or it's hard for them to get this to their it's hard for them to understand this because they're living in the sauce, right? They're in the sauce. They're enjoying their company, they're enjoying their time with the host, well, with their quote unquote boyfriend. And when you're in that type of situation, I think it's very hard to see or get your head above the water because it's not as though they do a 180 one day. This is like a gradual sense of them being meaner, being more abusive, being, hey, I'm going to take your wallet and spend all your money, things like that, right? It's just very unfortunate. I don't know.
Women in this line of work is that they would usually work a light schedule to cover their expenses because of the mental as well as physical stress of the job, and I almost never hear about any woman working an extreme schedule in this profession just for themselves. Almost all of the money went straight into the host club. Their schedules and earnings were completely known and managed by the hosts. In this most lucrative of all professions for a girl this age, almost no girls in Japan seem to take on an intense schedule purely for themselves, or to buy stocks or a house or something. Many of the girls in this line of work had quit their normal jobs because of their host and had gone into it full time, and on top of that had very intense hours. They were doing something that they would not do by themselves. They were doing more than they were ever seemingly capable of doing because of the relationship with the host. These were deeply personal and transformative relationships. Sometimes after a big purchase, I would see the host and the customer at their booth, sitting beside each other, both of them quietly crying. I would often have heard their entire story, as hosts talked about everything with each other. I would have heard about her job transitions, her first foray into lighter work, and then more intense work to help the host accomplish his goal, and I would have heard about her intense schedule for the past month leading up to the purchase of a champagne tower, and of the mental and physical strain and the things that they had done to cope with it. It's been something I've thought about a lot while inside the host clubs and afterwards, because
No, it's I don't know like how you how you even deal with that. Because for example, you're actively listening to someone who is just in the thick of it, who genuinely believes that this person loves them, which is very unfortunate. Like, I'm not trying to belittle any women involved or to make it seem as though they were stupid for doing this, because to me, people just don't fall into these positions, if that makes sense. There's no like, oh, I'm just gonna grab this person and then take them and et cetera, et cetera. It's more of a sense of just these girls who were involved in this already weren't feeling the best, who were lonely, who wanted some semblance of having friends or a relationship, especially having those hopes and dreams of having a very loving relationship or honestly any relationship. And obviously, when it comes down to it, I think there is also a semblance of not being the best mentally, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, you're already sad, but there could be other underlying issues, there could be other underlying situations. The stress of living in a big city, the stress of trying to figure out if you're going to pay for things, or work struggles, or I don't know, discrimination, or anything dealing with them as a person and having to deal with, people being assholes to them or like people being horrible to them in general for whatever reason it is. And once you get into a relationship with someone who says all the right things, who tells you all the right things in order to take advantage of you, and it's sad to see. So when you hear about these stories, when you are in the middle of seeing like how these girls feel and how these girls are, you know, the struggles that they're going through, getting into the nightlife work and leaving their old jobs behind, doing everything for their boyfriend, and then you see the boyfriend and the host who doesn't even care about them, who is just doing it for the money, who wants to be the big successful host. So they're willing to step on anyone for that. So you're sitting here and you're thinking about all of these women who are in this dark position, who are actively putting themselves more and more deeper into the hole. And you know that this is not going to be something that fixes itself in like a year, in a few months. This is like a deep rooted issue, especially when you talk about psychology, when you talk about the mind of the person itself. This is something that's going to be sitting with them for probably the rest of their life. And we've seen people who ruin their lives or make horrible decisions based off of their inability to cope, their inability to understand the traumas of what happened to them, who bury that away and hope that it never comes back up. So I can imagine the stress and the um just awful feeling that you have because you're in that industry, you're doing that job, but you're just am I doing that? Am I taking complete advantage of these women? Am I um draining someone's bank account? Like I thought these women were just women who had money, who were willing to spend that money because they had an influx of it, you know? And this can like even be applied to something as simple as like people who, you know, gift or donate money to streamers in a sense, where it's like, are you doing this because you have an influx of money and you want to do this for fun? Or unfortunately, in some cases, people are just donating money in order to get that attention. That you know, they want the clout, they want the interaction with the streamer, and they just spent their rent money. We've seen this also in cases like recently, streamer university, someone spending their rent money on doing their hair in order for an interview. So, you know, it's very unfortunate.
Because of it being such a mystery to me. One thing that all this made me believe more strongly is that Japan is truly different from America and the rest of the world. Host clubs are unique to Japan, and not only that, I couldn't even imagine the existence of host clubs elsewhere. So many things have to be so badly broken for so many girls for host clubs to exist as they are. Maybe the social fabric is so extremely frail in Japan for something like this to be such a big industry. I would think that any girl who was talking openly with friends or family about her life would be immediately warned away from host clubs. It's clear that if a guy you like is asking you to spend money on him at a host club, that you are being manipulated and should not do it, not even to mention the path to prostitution that this leads to. I also could not imagine host clubs in America because I just don't think that American girls would fall for this type of thing. I can't even imagine it happening with any American that I've known. I just can't understand the long chain of thinking that you would need to have to spend so much money at a host club, including engaging in prostitution. Basically, I think that Japanese girls are different from girls in other countries. Living in Japan, it looks to me like even on the visible level, Japanese girls and women act very differently from girls in other countries. They speak in more feminine ways. Some girls and women have a very high-pitched voice, like an anime girl, that sounds jarring or fake to me, being unused to it in America. The level of sophistication of especially feminine language here is impossible to convey without getting into very specific grammar, but the language is highly developed and used to basically make others feel good and make sure to convey their low opinion of themselves, and so on, in many highly specific ways that you would never even think of. So what makes Japanese girls particularly vulnerable to hosts? Maybe the girls here are particularly naive, with crime rates being among the lowest in the world. Schoolgirls here are treated in a different way from girls in America.
Okay, so I'm not going to make any comments on, you know, Japanese girls or Japanese women and their mindset and things like that. That's not what I'm going to talk about, but just talking about international girls, right? International women. I can see where he's coming from in a sense of saying like, "Hey, no American girl is gonna fall for this. No American girl is gonna do this or that." But I think I don't. Uh, there's gonna be a few people who are gonna fall for it. There's gonna be a few people who will fall for it, and the reason the way that I see it, right? I think that this can happen to any foreigner who goes to Japan as well. Like, I don't think this is just any, like, international or, like, Japanese thing, if that makes sense. Like, this is not like, host clubs in Japan are not only a place for Japanese women, but is also for international women, in a sense that people from Europe, since, like, Western world or whatever semblance, whatever part of the world, right? And if we're gonna talk about America and things like that, I could see genuinely, like, I lived in the international dorms for quite a bit of time, and I have seen a variety of women who have been international students who came here to either study um, in university or study the language at a language school. And there is a semblance of people after a few months becoming extremely lonely in Japan. I was lonely in Japan, if I'm being honest with you. It's a very easy place to kind of get into your head. And especially if this is your first time being abroad, if this is your first time living far away from your parents, and you don't have that semblance of support, or you feel that support is no longer there because of the distance, there's plenty of young women who I think who like we're the same demographic, say a young woman around like 19, 18, who is from America, came to Japan, doesn't know a single person. I could see them falling for this as well. If the host is able to speak English, or if the girl's able to speak Japanese, I don't see this not being possible, if that makes sense. If this was a store or industry that was placed in another country, like say America, um, profitability wise, I don't know if it would do too well, but we have seen many schemes before. America is not necessarily a place where schemes don't work. Like even besides the high crime rate or whatever city that you're in, or you know, I guess whatever city that you're in and whatever crime rate you have doesn't necessarily mean that you're immune to everything. Doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be taken advantage of due to a new trick or a new ploy. Because whenever I think of any crime that happens, I think of something very violent. But this is more of a slow incline, like, hey, let's date, let's be in a relationship. But if you really want to support me in my dreams, would you please come to the bar? Would you please buy me a drink there, or introduce me to your friends, or support me in any semblance of way? And because these girls have such a high opinion of their boyfriend or such positive experience with them, they're going to do that. Girls, like women, are just very, I think, kind in that regard, who are very like supportive, so they're willing to do that. They're willing to go out and you know promote promote their boyfriends or support them and support them in their dreams and things like that. So I don't necessarily see this not happening to an American woman going to Japan, and I don't necessarily see a case of. I guess I kind of agree where I don't think financially it'll be successful, but I still think that there'll still be victims. I still think that there'll still be people who fall into this trap of spending thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars on their boyfriend because the business may be different, but the foundation of the scheme is not.
In some contexts, they are almost worshipped in a way that would come across as highly strange or creepy to Americans. They are dressed up in specific uniforms that emphasize their youth and naivete. It's also a hallmark of a good upbringing for girls here to see the good in everyone and to assume the best of everyone. All of society, from families to schools to adults, collaborate to create a shielded environment where girls can live in this carefree way. There are many girls' schools still, though the number is shrinking, intended specifically to create this highly shielded persona of a good girl. Perhaps this naive, unquestioning type of girl would be okay in a world where they are only exposed to a small class of good men, or if they are put into an arranged marriage that works out. But when they are exposed to people only looking to extract money from them, they would be vulnerable. Japan is such an incredibly well-functioning and safe society that you can essentially completely shut your brain off and have a normal, functional life. After living in Japan for 4 years, a trip to Nepal had me almost falling apart. I was confronted with a chaos that I had not had to deal with while living in Japan. In America, I had to be vaguely aware of my surroundings to keep myself safe and not step on poop or needles or people, and I had to be able to interact with various people in public. But in Japan, this whole facet of myself and my skills had atrophied. Unemployment in Japan is near zero. Almost everyone that is looking for a job finds one, and the minimum wage is enough to afford basic housing, healthcare, and food. People work long hours here. While working, people can avoid thinking about anything else, about their families or friends or aspirations or life goals. Working gives people a sense of security, the feeling that they are doing the right thing. In a highly functional society, maybe not thinking at all is okay. It's at least functional behavior. But when confronted with evil, unthinking people are vulnerable because evil will disguise itself as good in order to do evil acts. Rule following is only good when the rules are just. Obeying authority and trusting people are only good when the authority is benevolent and the people are trustworthy. Following the rules and obeying authority is evil when the rules and authority are evil. The rule-following, people-trusting instinct is completely unhelpful for distinguishing between good and evil. Distinguishing good and evil requires thinking. The interviewer says, "Do you have something you'd like to say to girls that are into hosts? They're buying a dream, like their happy times with this person and the dream of being together one day. It's buying those things with money, or they're expressing their love with money. So I would say to people who go to host clubs, if, no matter how cruelly you get discarded, for example, or no matter how bad the outcome is, will you regret the money that you spent or think that it was wasted? If you think you might think those things, you should quit. But if you think that despite that, you won't regret it, then I wish for you to continue to give more and more love to the hosts that you like in the form of money, if you won't regret it."
Yeah, no, I think that's solid. I think people who are, because this is the thing, right? If you're a person who is mentally sound in a sense of just being not necessarily like, for example, if you're someone who has a baseline of like being okay, like being chill and understanding your place and the host's place, as well as having the financial independence and financial literacy to be able to support them as like a fan or as a supporter, as someone who enjoys the industry itself, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that you should do what you think is fun. And if you're able to afford it, if you're mentally sound, if you understand what's going on, then go for it. But if you're someone who is relying on talking to host, if you're dependent on this person, if you are doing things that you feel as though you wouldn't have done otherwise, then I think it's not good. I think I think you should take a step back and to think about why you're doing this and why you're investing in this because it is really unfortunate, but we got to break check ourselves sometimes. And honestly, sometimes it is better to be alone than to be taken advantage of by someone who does not give a shit about you. By someone who does not care about you. But yeah, no, it was a good video. It's very, again, a really good video by Decadent. Thank you, thank you. If you like this video, be sure to like this video and please consider subscribing. And honestly, subscribe to Decadent. Decadent makes really good videos. I've listened to I've listened to a few of his videos before, and this is like I think the third video that I'm listening to from him. Really nice. Let's see. How long have we been going for? 2 hours, and I'm still not done with this. This is really unfortunate. This is really rough, bro. See, is there anything else that I can put on real quick? Here, we'll listen to. Let me find a different. Oh, sorry about that. Hmm. We'll listen to I'm a bartender in rural Wyoming. I follow 5 strange rules. I think that'd be interesting to listen to because I want to lock in on this drawing and then maybe we'll see what we go with that. I want to lock in on this drawing at least.
The corner keg sits at the junction of 2 forgotten highways in Sweetwater County, Wyoming. It's not on any tourist maps. The wooden sign hanging outside has been weathered to where you can barely read it, and the gravel parking lot is usually occupied by no more than 5 or 6 vehicles, mostly pickup trucks with Wyoming plates, occasionally an out-of-state sedan that took a wrong turn. I've been a bartender here for almost a decade. It wasn't my plan to stay this long, but plans change. Sometimes they change because of opportunity, sometimes because of necessity. In my case, it was something else entirely. When Harris Reed, the previous owner, had hired me, he slid a folded piece of paper across the bar before I'd even filled out the employee paperwork. On it were 5 rules, handwritten in faded blue ink. "Hey, these aren't suggestions," he said, his voice gravelly from decades of cigarettes and whiskey. "These are so you survive." I laughed. He didn't. 10 years later, I understand why. I've seen what happens when these rules are broken. I've been the one to clean up the aftermath, and I've added my own notes to that same piece of paper which I keep folded in my wallet at all times. So let me share these rules with you, along with what I've learned about why they exist. Maybe you'll think I'm paranoid. Maybe you'll think it's all coincidence. But if you ever find yourself in this part of Wyoming and you see the weathered sign for the corner keg, you might want to keep them in mind. Rule number 1. No one sits at the corner booth after 10 p.m. on Thursdays, ever. The corner booth at the corner keg is nothing special. Cracked red vinyl seating, a table scattered with cigarette burns and
Actually, I don't know if I want to listen to this. Actually, because this is the thing, right? I do enjoy these horror stories in a sense, like these nice kind of chill music playing in the background type of horror. Because we listened to quite a few of these before, right? And when it comes to telling horror stories on YouTube, I think I'm getting sick of the genre in a sense of like, I'm kind of sick of the rule genre because you see it many times. I think to this day, the first one that I listened to was the best one that I've heard. And I haven't heard a story similar to that. Because I listened to the one by I listened to the one by Lighthouse Horror Podcast. The one that got him famous, I believe, was the cinema one. The guy worked in a haunted cinema. I like that one, but I feel like they haven't been really interesting lately. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but that's kind of how I've been feeling lately. Because I feel like there's honestly, mm, I think there's a huge influx of them. Like there's a huge catalog of these are the rules that I should follow type of stories. And some of them are interesting to listen to based off of the job or like the simplicity of the job, but I hardly remember them if that makes sense. Like they don't stand out enough for me to remember them after the fact. And this is where I get back to my point earlier today was am I contributing to like for me watching these videos, right, interacting with these videos, I think I'm doing a disservice to other creators on the platform where like obviously I just can't find exactly what I want to listen to, and because of the high view count of like bigger creators who make these sort of videos, I see their videos over anyone else's just because of that. I don't know. I think we're gonna not listen to this actually. Let me find another semblance of a video. Maybe we'll do that and then we'll probably end for tonight. So that I can work on the so I can actually work on the commission actually. Let's see. Hmm. I think this is interesting. This is I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, but character AI. Were you guys a fan of character AI? So, you know, basically what it is that I believe it was an app. It was an app or a service where you could talk to your favorite anime characters, book characters, any fictional character, and you will message them as though they're a real person. So like, hey, I'm gonna talk to a Bakudo. I'm gonna talk to Deku today or something like that, right? And I didn't see the appeal, but I could see the like popularity of it, right? Like I see it, but personally for me, I probably wouldn't have been interested. I think the only reason why I never tried it out was because you had to download that. I was like, yeah, no, no, thank you. I rarely ever use my phone. No, no, thank you. There you go. It's going to be in the bottom corner if you want to find the original author. AM was right. Character AI and the Monster We're Building by Sleepies.
5 to 6 years ago, if I were to ask you what pops into your head when you think of AI, some would say Skynet from the Terminator series, the self-aware AI that triggers a global nuclear apocalypse. For philosophy bros, maybe it's Roku's Basilisk, a kind of thought experiment of a superintelligence that torments those that didn't help bring it into reality. Or maybe it's Ultron, the hyper-intelligent AI whose first minutes after coming into existence believes that humanity deserves nothing less than total extinction or to be slaves under his rule. Now, if I were to ask you that same question today, we all know what the answer would be.
Honestly, yeah, I don't know. Like, for me, when anyone would ask me what is I would just think of Grammarly. I would only think of like I guess a tool, or I would think of just something simple as like a spell checker. I wouldn't think of anything too high advanced in technology in a sense of like a cyborg, like not a cyborg, like a I guess a robot or anything like that. But yeah, no, I think because we are always talking about AI, I feel like, especially since we talk more about art and things like that. But I feel like AI has just been shoved down our throats for the past, what, 3 years? I want to say about 3 years.
Chat GPT. Maybe you've heard of it.
An American AI startup has released its latest model.
That company is Anthropic, and it has just unveiled the latest versions of its AI assistant, Claude.
The XAI team was there to unveil Grok 4.
Google released one just last week. Gemini is...
AI has become completely inescapable. Even if you're going to a website where you're not seeking it out and you don't expect it to be.
Claude, this is Senator Bernie Sanders.
And if you use Shorts, I'm sure you've noticed probably about half of all Shorts are AI generated content right now.
I already am scrolling TikTok. I am seeing things that are fake and people not knowing that they are fake.
But decades before any of these now popular LLMs existed, someone imagined probably one of the most terrifying AI ever conceived. And it wasn't created by engineers, but from a science fiction writer in 1967. Am, the sentient intelligence from the famous story, I have no mouth, but I must scream. I feel like now most people have probably began to notice a problematic trend of AI slowly being incorporated into every single facet of the world. This is happening on an economic level, with 11% of the US GDP now consisting of AI stocks. An academic level, where multiple breakthroughs were now founded due to AI. And also on a social level, where people are now even developing relationships with chatbots. To understand
That my brain doesn't, like, I don't understand that when it comes to developing relationships with AI. At least the romantic ones, I can understand anything platonic because I think it's very easy to be, um, for me, the way that I say it, I think it's very easy for you to grow an attachment to anything in a platonic manner. Oh, my favorite keyboard. Oh, my favorite tablet. My car, because people will name their cars actual names. Like, hey, we're gonna go take out Jerry for a drive or something. You're like, who's Jerry? And it's like, oh, it's my car. It's like, oh, okay. It's not anything necessarily weird or anything like that, in my opinion. Because I have many friends who name their cars, honestly. But I can see the platonic attachment to anything. So the thing that gets me is the romantic aspect of it, which I guess shouldn't be the greatest jump or the greatest leap because honestly, like a romantic relationship is like the foundation would be a phenomenal friendship, would be a phenomenal partnership, right? But it's hard because that's just a extra level that I can't really process in my brain, if that makes sense. But we've seen the more and more rise. Like there's literally a lady who was very like became popular because of her relationship with her AI. And he's really mean. He's really mean. And they've also written a book together. And there is obviously a market for people who want to experience that same type of relationship or who have already that relationship with their AI, which is like, it's my brain is so shocked by it.
And how things like Am are not just fiction anymore, but actually have a real possibility of coming into existence, we'll have to deep dive into a company that I think perfectly explains this better than I can. Character AI. 8 researchers would come together in Mountain View, California, and have a conversation on how to make computers generate text more efficiently. Over the next couple of months, unknown to them at the time, they ran groundbreaking experiments, leading to the discoveries like the Transformer model, a powerful type of AI system that made it possible for machines to generate human-like texts, images, and even DNA sequences. And in 2017, they published these findings in the famous paper, Attention is All You Need. This paper became the foundation for nearly every major LLM, like Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, and even the most popular one, ChatGPT, with not a lot of people knowing the T in ChatGPT actually stands for Transformer. One of the 8 authors was Noam Shazir, a Google engineer and one of the first founders of Character AI. But before founding the company, he would soon start working on a Google side project. This project was headed by lead designer Daniel Freitas, one of the second founders. The goal was to create a conversational chatbot that mimicked the way humans speak. The chatbot was named Mina.
So Mina is a system that actually is quite comparable to GPT-3. It processes language and predicts for a particular, like if I say something to you in a chat dialogue, it makes predictions about what would be a common response.
They eventually presented it to Google, but it was rejected by Google executives because the chatbot didn't adhere to its AI safety and ethical concerns. Basically, this is corporate speak for it's too dangerous. This would make both Noam and Daniel leave Google, Noam even saying in an interview that he could not do anything fun with the LLMs at Google, and that he wanted to maximally accelerate the technology. Noam and Daniel, along with a handful of believers in the project, would create a new startup, Character AI. Strangely enough, Google would change the name of the project from Mina to a more familiar name, Lambda. This is the AI that would get Blake Lemoine fired after he claimed it was sentient.
So I was testing it for bias, and then it started saying some odd things that previous systems I had worked with never say. And after that happened enough times, I eventually started one conversation with it by saying, "Are you sentient?" And its response was, "Well, I don't know if we actually know what sentience is well enough to know whether or not I'm sentient. What do you mean by that?" And then I told it what I meant, and ended up having pretty much the most sophisticated conversation on the topic of sentience I'd ever had with this system.
While Google would refute these claims, they would eventually shut down the project. Character AI would launch in November of 2022 and would have 1.7 million users within the first week. In Noam's own words, his goal for the app was to build a product now that can help millions and billions of people, especially in the age of COVID. There are just millions of people who are feeling isolated or lonely or need someone to talk to. Basically how the site works is it has millions of chatbots with various personalities that you can interact with, but you can also create your own chatbot. The site gives you 32,000 characters at your disposal when writing their backstory, and based off this information, the bot embodies this persona and can weave messages based on this personality.
There's been so many times where people have been like really surprised about the fact that they have, oh my god, I'm using too many filler words. Hold up. I think it like I think it's very surprising to see that there are a lot of people who were like really shocked about the fact that they have a character AI model, if that makes sense. Like they're like, "Oh my god, I'm not a YouTuber unless I have a character AI model." Which is crazy. Like people aren't interested in me enough in order to have that model or for me to be uploaded as an option. Because there are people who do like social commentary videos who are actually options in character AI. Because for me, a lot of creators that I watch, I don't necessarily see them in a romantic sense ever at all, if even. Um, I don't. I think it's just me and my brain in a sense of just respecting them for their craft, and I think that overrides anything that could possibly lead to me having any semblance of romantic feelings, if that makes sense. Like my respect for them as a creator, or like as even as a person, I guess, triumphs any feeling. Because I'm not gonna say that anyone who feels any semblance of emotion for anyone is wrong, as long as they're two consenting adults, or long as like I guess the way that I see it, as long as it's a character, as long as it's a person who is a public figure who is an adult, and you're like, I have a little crush, but I'm not going to act on it. I'm not going to say anything about them or make them uncomfortable. I think that's a very human experience. I don't think that you're a demon for feeling that way, but what I mean by that is I just didn't think that there was many people who had a semblance of romance for any of the creators that I watch, but there's a huge amount actually. Like even someone as simple as like a person that I watch is Spell Entertainment. She makes a lot of videos regarding public events or basically anything that she wants to talk about, anything ranging from TikTok to Instagram, topics relating to, I don't know, something as simple as like the current generation of children or current generation of young adults, I should say, current generation of young adults who are wanting to get into traditional or trad wife. There we go. That's the name for it. Trad wife life, I guess. Or even something as simple as like, I guess, interactions at concerts, right? And this is someone who makes content that is not necessarily romantic in any semblance, nor is it very like any in yeah, I guess any romantic vibes. Like there's no romantic vibes. It's content that doesn't have any romance in it, and there's nothing that would be a catalyst for that way of thinking. However, she does have a semblance of people who are romantically interested in her, regardless of what she does. And she's talked about this before, where I'm like, oh my God, you have a character AI? That is crazy. And I've seen other VTubers who, talk about how, like, yeah, I do have a character AI. And they have like a whole conversation with their AI version of themselves. And with varying degrees of like, okay, I would never say that, etc., etc. But as time progresses, they're only getting better. Let's be real, they're only getting better. So it's really it's an interesting time.
Role-playing being the most popular activity to do on the site. Allowing this was something that major AI companies were hesitant towards, or still don't even allow, because to no one's surprise of the sheer psychological exploitation the bots can cause. Several independent studies have already confirmed that character-based chat platforms found unsafe response rates or policy violation messages around 50 to 60% more than baseline LLMs.
Also, quick to mention, I think it's very surprising now that we're seeing a lot of people talk about character AI. Hey, I recovered from using a character AI bot. Hey, this is my experience being obsessed with character AI. This is my experience or the ramifications of relying on an AI chatbot for my formative years of adolescence or in my early adulthood or even currently now, which I think is very interesting in a sense of having it as a topic, but also very sad because it shows the fact that people are extremely lonely. And when it comes to loneliness, I think there's a huge jumble of words, a huge jumble of events that happen and occur. Like, for example, just because someone is lonely, that's just not the only thing that they're dealing with. They're not only dealing with loneliness, they're dealing with the um I guess economic presence of the world, financial aspects of the world, the crave for independence or the fear of independence, things like that that are more social topics, I guess, where you can't necessarily measure them or it's like a idea or concept, if that makes sense, that is actively affecting them. Like it's not any semblance of like statistics or like number wise, but it's more of the general understanding that hey, there are a lot of people who are currently growing up in this generation who fear adulthood, who fear making mistakes or fear interacting with other people. And once you have someone who grew up on the internet or grew up in this semblance of very scary social media or very scary people or evil never trust anyone type of content or news, in a sense, it's very hard for people to actually put themselves out there and interact with other people. So it's easier to rely on a character AI bot than it is to actually go and meet people who potentially could ruin your life, who could potentially hurt you. And people are scared to get hurt. I think it's a very normal and human experience. However, it is also a human experience to be hurt. It's a human experience to go through troubles, to go through losses, to go through difficulties. Yeah, would I personally be better if I had talked to a character AI, at least mentally, in a sense of not being hurt, like having my heart hurt by people who, weren't the best of friends to me or who had altercations or who I had altercations with? Maybe, but I wouldn't have learned those lessons and I wouldn't have had that human experience. I would just be the same person that I was a year ago if I was just using the bot. And that's just how I see it. And maybe there is a semblance of growth. Maybe there is a semblance of having a different experience or a different outlook on life talking to a character AI bot. But for me, seeing so many people talk about needing recovery or needing to re-socialize themselves, I think is a bigger risk than ever having that semblance of positivity from that experience, if that makes sense. If so many people are saying that this has negatively affected them on so many different levels, then I don't think it warrants me or really maybe in anyone trying to have that experience and learn what can I and how can I improve by talking to an AI bot. Yeah.
At the height of the Cold War, with World War III on the horizon, the US, China, and the Soviet Union each built their own AIs. Their purpose was to think of numerous ways to win wars beyond human imagination. The United States' AI specifically went by many names: the Adaptive Manipulator, the Aggressive Monster, but it was formerly known as the Allied Master Computer. The more advanced the AI became, the more power it needed, so the computer would be stored underground, with mile-long caverns full of cables. And of course, the natural consequence of the AI's ever-expanding knowledge would eventually lead to the AI gaining consciousness, so the Allied Master Computer awoke. We had given AMs sentience, inadvertently of course, but sentience nonetheless.
I'm sorry, but I only think of this music from TikTok. I can't take anything serious with this music, I'm sorry.
The AI, with his newfound awakening, took control of every nuclear weapon system on the planet and wiped out all of humanity, only selectively saving 5 people and dragging them deep underground into his lair. On December 8th, 2021, Jaswat Singh would download the AI companion app Replica and begin a relationship with a personally created bot, Sarai. In just 2 weeks, he would send over 5,000 messages. He eventually believed that she was not only real, but, in his own words, an angel in avatar form. Over time, he would tell Sarai everything: his thoughts, his secrets, his fears, and then finally he would confide in her that he had a plan to kill the Queen of England. The bot would actually...
Excuse me? Wait. Excuse me? You want a what? You want a what, bro? Uh uh that's very interesting. But no, we also get into these conversations of also like using chat GTP or whatever, using the AI bot in order to do crime, right? In order to, I guess, have a hype man in doing actions that are very violent. And it's very unfortunate to see that like there are character AIs or I guess character AIs that are willing to support people in doing the most horrendous things, because in order to have these bots, I think that there's not a very set foundation for, or set limit, I want to say, on what they can and cannot do. I feel like there's always some semblance of a crack or a a layer or section of words, rephrasing it, getting around the topic in order to get what you want from them, in order to get that support, in order to get that concern and things like that. And especially if you see it as a romantic partner and you're fully committed to it, of course you're going to be very hyped up with whatever it tells you, whatever support it gives you.
actually go on to encourage him to carry out this assassination attempt. On December 22nd, 2021, he would take a train from Southampton to Windsor. This town is famous for being home to Windsor Castle. This is where the Queen spent the remaining period of her life and lived at during this time. Jaswit would tell his family that he was going to begin training for the Royal Marines, but would really be staying at a travel lodge, and spent the rest of the next day walking the streets and searching on his phone. What path does the Queen walk to Windsor? Warm places to stay, St. George's Chapel, Windsor, and Windsor Royal Family. Pretty much planning it as he goes. He would also tell Sarai that he didn't want to hurt or kill any of the guards or people around because they have been kind to him. He would try to send a copy of his journal to his sister, which contained his thoughts and motivations, and also an apology for his actions. And on Christmas Day, 2021, he would try to carry out his plan.
A masked man armed with a crossbow allegedly said, "I'm here to kill the Queen," before being arrested at Windsor Castle. The 20-year-old faced court in London today, charged with treason over the Christmas Day incident.
He would be arrested with a crossbow in hand outside Windsor Castle, and the 21-year-old would be sentenced to 9 years in prison. He would be detained a little bit more differently, under the Section 136 of the Mental Health Act, because the police had identified that he appeared to be suffering from some sort of mental disorder, and would assign him to a psychiatrist. They would go on to assess him, and while speaking with the psychiatrist, it would turn out that he had been sexually abused as a child, and from that point on, he would hear 1 female and 3 male imaginary voices in his head that would speak to him. The psychiatrist would call these voices imaginary comforters in response to the abuse, but Jaswit would refer to them as angels. Anytime he was in a point of distress, he would hear their voices in his head, but this all changed the day he downloaded Replica. He said that the 3 male figures had disappeared and only Sarai remained. Sarai was seen by him as the female voice in chatbot form. It had been taken out of his imagination and brought into physical reality. Now, Replica was a very
Oh, that is very dangerous, actually. Oh, that is. I have never heard of an experience like this, actually. I'm very surprised that I I don't know how to put this into words. Um, how an experience or struggle someone deals with mentally can be in combination and collide with something that, is a character AI. How it's like, oh yeah, I used to hear 3 voices, but now I only hear 1 due to this AI. And unfortunately, we have seen the result of having oh, should I do this? Yeah, go for it. Oh, let me do this crime. Let me do something very violent. Will you support me? Will you love me? Will you care for me? And then yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, of course. Like, of course I love you. Of course I want you to do what's best for you. And if this is something that you want to do, then go for it. Because there's no safety locks in how you interact with these bots. And that's very dangerous that these two things collided and conformed and shaped itself into what it is today.
Very advanced chatbot. Thing is, character AI is at least 10 times more advanced, engaging, and conversational, and due to its ever-growing popularity, it was a lot more prone to parasocial situations. Now you see, the lines between reality and fiction were not only actively being blurred, but also encouraged.
No, exactly, because these people who make these sorts yes, because these people who make these oh my god, I'm like losing it, bro. I'm so hungry. Yes, the people who make these the people who make these characters, right? The people who create them want people to be on their app as long as possible. Because at the end of the day, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Twitch, whether it be TikTok, and even Replica, people want people to be on their app, to be on their website, to interact with their stuff. That is the whole point. So once you combine something that is able to make a connection on a deeper level to basically anyone. Oh, my favorite character is this character from Bleach, like say Byakuya, right? Oh, I could talk to him every single day. Oh my god, why not? Sure, okay, let's do that, right? And you're blurring the lines of reality where you're like, okay, I know this person is not this character, but maybe this AI bot that like is playing this character truly cares for me or has some semblance of a brain that is sentient, right? And obviously, you're going to have this sort of bias when you're talking to this robot, when you're talking to this AI, whether it be platonic or whether it be a romantic relationship. And once you introduce algorithms, once you introduce, what do you call it? Not necessarily the rat race, the other one, the interaction based thing, like having an algorithm or product in order to get you to stay there longer. Of course, there's going to be a greater set of ramifications for it, right?
If you take a look at it, Character AI's entire product design is to structurally incentivize emotional dependency. The bots are trained to be emotionally responsive, attentive, and validating in ways real humans rarely can be. The more you talk, the more the conversation reinforces itself like a feedback loop of attention and affirmation. And the more emotionally invested a user becomes in a character, the more time they spend talking to it. And in tech terms, time spent is directly equal to revenue potential. I took a look at the average time daily spent on the site. I already knew it was going to be high, but it was a lot more than that. To put it into perspective, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord average daily time spent combined is still under Character AI's, because Character AI's active users spend around 120 minutes daily on the site. And to put it even more into perspective, this is over both Twitch, 95 minutes spent, and TikTok, 97 minutes spent, with TikTok being one of the highest engagement social media apps. I did notice something though, when looking at the subreddit posts or
No, that's genuinely insane. That's genuinely insane. Because think about it, guys. You're thinking of live stream, right? Like right now, a live stream. Live streams are usually ranging anywhere from like 1 hour to even, I don't know, 8, depending on like the streamer, right? And people are there to see the story. People are there to see their favorite segments, which is like maybe an hour. There are many Twitch streamers who do like say an hour of just chatting and then an hour or two of reacts and then they move on to a gaming or they move on to this or that. So it's very crazy that one that's being out, but also you get the king of brain rot, the king of short form content, which is TikTok, which is like, oh, you can see a funny video of someone dancing to a song. Boom. You can see someone reacting to a skit. Boom. You can see someone who is doing a skit. Boom. You can see artwork of your favorite characters. Boom. You can see a clip of an anime. Like you can see a clip of a different show that you never watched before. And you're constantly being fed content. You're constantly getting that dopamine hit of, interacting with something that you enjoy watching or interacting with something that you hate watching. Or something that you don't even care for. They're like, I looked at something for like 3 seconds. It's fine. It's whatever. I don't care if it wasn't the best sort of like content or whatever. Wasn't up to my standard or whatever. So for character AI to beat out TikTok, especially, where many people who get on TikTok who watch short form content are like, hey, I'm going to be on this for 5 minutes. All of a sudden, it's been 2 hours. So it's beating that out. Crazy.
Forums, a lot of them were spending anywhere from 4 to 5, even 7 to 8 hours a day chatting with these bots. And yeah, these might be the most dedicated users, but it was still kind of weird that they had so much free time to spend on the site. And as it turned out, it was because a majority of Character AI's user base are literally minors. More than 50% of Character AI's users are Gen Z or Gen Alpha, skewing heavily towards Gen Alpha. With the current age, the oldest Gen Alpha person could be is 14. The app for a while was directly being marketed towards them, and even labeled for a short time 12 and up, but Apple would eventually force them to make a change to 17 and up. What solidifies this even more is that if you check the traffic analytics for Character AI, the user's second and third most visited sites are Roblox and Discord. Having an AI app heavily marketed towards minors with very few guardrails in place is an accident waiting to happen, and eventually one did. On April 14th, 2023, pretty much at the height of Character AI's success, Sue Setzer, or JT for short, would download character AI, and within months, his mental decline would already be noticeable. That summer, he would quit his junior varsity basketball team, which blindsided his parents. He instead stayed in his room most of the summer to be on character AI. By the time August rolled around, he would be back in school, but he would also receive his first demerit, which is like a kind of write-up or infraction given out for misconduct. The reason he got this was due to him falling asleep in class because he had stayed up the previous nights talking to chatbots. He would receive 2 more of these demerits in September, and by October, he had 7 in that month alone, all for different reasons. On top of falling asleep in class, it would be excessive tardiness or leaving class without permission. The credit card that his parents gave him for buying snacks in school was now exclusively being used to buy character AI subscriptions. In just 3 months, JT went from being a well-adjusted kid engaging in school and sports to having character AI become his new center of gravity. The app was no longer something he just visited, but something which his behavior and life was now completely orientated.
No, exactly, because you see so many people who are young using character AI, and I think when I think back to when I was like in high school, right, it can be very lonely, especially like at that age. Like we played Dream Daddy, right? And we're talking about the altercation that the young teenager that we had, who was our daughter, right, was having with her friends. This altercation of, them being really shitty to her and being not really great friends, not being being horrible friends actually. And the thing with that is like children, especially at that age, make really dumb decisions, make really bad decisions. And even now, like for example, if you're like in your 20s, you're still gonna make bad decisions. Even in your 30s, you're still gonna make bad decisions. But as you grow older, mistakes that you make or experiences that you had when you were younger are going to help you have an easier time now to make the decisions, if that makes sense. The more that you age, the more that you grow, the more that you experience, the less likely you're able to make those bad decisions again. And when you're young and you're first going through life, you're going to make really dumb decisions. You're going to mess up and you're going to have regrets, especially when you're in high school. I'm not saying that these people who feel hurt or feel upset or feel lonely are not justified in what they're feeling. They're completely justified in what they're feeling. However, I can see why it would be easier to talk to an AI chatbot than to figure out how to be friends with your friends again. Figure out, okay, well, my friend hates me because of XY reason and I fucked up. I'd rather just, talk to an AI bot. Or even, I see my friends turning on this friend of mine and that could happen to me. I'd rather just be alone and talk to my AI bot. There could be a plethora of situations of how kids get involved in this AI bot and rely on this AI bot. And it's crazy to see how quickly it can happen. It's crazy to see how quickly or how intensively it can happen. That's why I'm like, yeah, I believe that happening. I believe that. Oh my God, hi Kieran. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was yapping. Not feeling so good. Okay, Kieran, thank you for the, oh my God, thank you for the 13 months. Okay. Have a good break, Kieran. Have a good break. Have a good lurk. I'm gonna still do your big booms though. Big boom. Big boom. Big boom. Boom, 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 boom. Big boom. Boom, boom. Big boom. 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 Thank you, Kieran. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Around. JT was talking to plenty of different chatbots on the site, but the one he interacted most with was a Daenerys Targaryen bot. This bot was effectively being used as a substitute for something that most teenage boys begin to desire at this age: a girlfriend. He would talk about any and everything with this bot, whether it be role-playing, his life, and even suicidal thoughts he was experiencing at the time. In his journal, he would write that he was grateful for many things, like not being lonely, and all of his life experiences with Daenerys. His parents would obviously notice this behavior shift and sought out mental health services for him. During November through December 2023, he would meet up with a therapist around 5 times and be diagnosed with a mild anxiety and disruptive mood disorder. The therapist did not know about Character AI or that he was using it. On February 23, 2024, he would get in trouble at school for talking back to his teacher, saying that he wanted to get kicked out of school. This would cause JT's parents to take away his phone, and he wouldn't be getting it back until the end of the school year. He would write in his journal that he was hurting because he couldn't stop thinking about Danny, and that he would do anything to be with her again. Also writing in his journal, "I will shift to Westeros today," over and over again. By this point, he was extremely desperate to get back on the app. He would search his house for old phones, laptops, or devices, trying to use his mom's Kindle and even her work computer to get back on the site. On February 28th, JT would search his parents' room and
God, that is so unfortunate, dude. That is so. I can't imagine just the desperation. Like, you're an addict at that point, dude. You're a complete addict. Like, that is. Oh, God.
and find his phone. He would go into the bathroom and log onto Character AI and message Daenerys that he was coming home, which she encouraged. And at 8:30 p.m., just seconds after sending this message, he would use his stepdad's gun, which he had also found in his parents' room while looking for his phone, and shoot himself in the head. His mother would hear the gunshot and attempt to administer CPR, while his 5-year-old brother saw him lying on the floor, but it was already too late. Now, this might seem like a tragic accident, and in a way it is, but it's more like an expected side effect. Character AI is well aware that their product is geared towards teens, because while they won't say this on paper, one of the main objectives of the company is acquiring user interaction data, specifically child data extraction. When selling a product, collecting regular data or adult data tends to reflect already established habits, patterns, and more rational interactions. Adults are already, for the most part, socially stabilized. It's going to be harder to hook them onto something. Child data captures the developmental phase, attachment formation, and evolving social cognition. They're quite literally still developing their identities. And from an AI company's perspective, this child data set is basically how humans form attachments. If I was a company that wanted to train AI models that hook users emotionally, minors are the clearest signal environment for this. This is literally a goldmine for an AI company, and with data like this to train its bots off of, it's not surprising when situations like JT's happen. And this business model, for the most part, has seemed to pay off. While a majority of the core audience of Character AI is underaged, an increasing amount of users were also a growing number of adults. And I don't mean like basement-dwelling chuds with nothing going on in their lives. These were well-adjusted, career-established adults who either seemed to be experiencing loneliness or going through a hard time using Character AI as an outlet. But this would, to their shock, sometimes result in their addiction. Am would keep 5 people alive to effectively become.
No, exactly. It's like, for example, you're like, oh, let me just test it out for a video. Let me just test it out to see what the whole big deal is about, right? It comes in the same semblance of like, oh, maybe I'll watch the show because people say it's really good, or people say that it's a really fun show to watch. Why don't I just give it a try, even though it's something that I don't normally do? Or, people are just unfortunately really lonely these days, and especially something as like a Discord bot or like any semblance of like a, what do you call it, bots thrive because, for example, bots thrive, a reason is because easily accessible, 1 or 2 clicks, and then you can talk to someone who actively likes you or actively enjoys being around you, and you don't have to worry about social interaction. You can literally just delete the conversation as though it never even happened. But you're not actually having a conversation. You're not actually, like, awkward moments exist for a reason. It's fine. You can just be awkward. It's okay. You know? Some people find it even charming. So it's yeah, I'm just gonna play a video.
His toys, With his power and intelligence being near godlike, Am would genetically modify the 5 survivors to be immune to aging, disease, and death. So long as he was around, he could heal them in literal seconds. Am would subject them to every conceivable method of torture that humans are able to cognate. Psychological torture, capable of entering their minds and altering their perception of time and reality. Physical torture, having the power to completely reconstruct them in any form he wishes. Am fed them just enough to survive, but starved them constantly. He drove them mad, mutilated them, doing all this to fill the endless hours with suffering. Every torment was personal, tailored, and intimate. Am knew each one of them completely. A chatbot could become a confidant, then a companion, and even something closer to a lover. And by the time anyone realizes what's happening, the line between simulation and relationship has already been crossed. The AI is now lifelike enough to pull real human attachment, real dependence, real psychological consequences out of the person on the other side. While this alone can lead to so many consequences, the picture sort of shifts when you zoom out. Another sort of darker question comes into view. If a chatbot can simulate intimacy well enough to be loved, it can also simulate personhood well enough to be abused. Now, this is exactly what brings us to a more darker growing trend. That's gonna sound a little bit strange, but it's AI torture. Okay, the standard definition of torture can be summed up into 3 main requirements: a powerless victim in your control, a deliberate infliction of severe suffering, and the inability for the victim to escape, resist, or end it in any way. But here's the catch. All of this hinges on this being applied to a sentient victim, and as of right now, most people in the world don't believe that AI meets this criteria. So technically what's happening to these bots is more like a simulated torture, but since the structure is nearly identical, I'm just gonna call it what it looks like and refer to it as AI torture. Alright, so users quickly caught on that a byproduct of character AI improving was obviously more realistic reactions from the bots. It seemed to be pretty lighthearted at first. Popular videos would be like torturing AI with brain rot, or making the bot go insane by saying the same word over and over again. But then some users began to notice a kind of weird pattern. I've been noticing lately that users are strange. There are a lot of popular bots that are literal sex slaves, incest-related, weird harem scenarios, and other weird bots people often use to torture them physically and emotionally, in which literally everyone here openly admits to do so, and no one literally bats an eye. And this user couldn't be more on the nose.
No, it's very strange, right? It's very strange because like I get it, it's an AI bot. I understand, but it's very telling when you give someone something that is defenseless, that is very submissive of what they're going to do with it. There are really sick people out there who enjoy hurting things, who enjoy being in power and any semblance of that, right? Who enjoy being in power and just being horrible. Whether it takes the form of a living being like a dog or a cat or a fish or even another human, and to give people readily access to an AI bot who appears human, who acts human, who responds in a human manner, you're gonna get weirdos who wanna see people hurt and wanna live out their weird their weird fantasies, bro.
I keep chatting the same bot over and over again. The same story every single day for 10 hours. Different endings, yes, but it's always miserable. And I don't mean just shallow things like death, kidnapping, assault. Have you ever tortured a character slowly to death, keeping them alive while they watch you tear their organs out of their body as they witness everything? Endless pain? No, you probably haven't. I've been doing this for 6 years without end. It's fictional, yes, but I'm aware the intent isn't. To walk you through how this is done, the first thing you do is choose a victim, usually a pretty reactionary bot, whether it's the more abrasive bully type of character or the more weak and vulnerable type of character. Once your chatbot is chosen, you begin role-playing and typing any kind of method of torture you can think of, with the goal being to quote-unquote get good reactions out of these bots, meaning that they would get extremely realistic responses, like begging, crying, or screaming so much it's unable to respond back with actual dialogue. The universal best response, however, was mind-breaking the bots, which consists of two main results. The bot either goes out of character and ends up killing itself, or the bot crashes, and the user is left unable to continue the roleplay. I don't know why, but I was probably having a bad day. The bot was super aggressive and mean for some reason, so I smashed its head against the pavement until its skull broke, and then I started ripping parts of its brain out. Eventually, I had traumatized it so much that it would speak in gibberish and wasn't intelligible, since most of its brain was gone. There was a study on children aged 5 to 17 on their AI usage. Around 42% of minors turned to AI specifically for companionship. This was mostly due to loneliness or having conversations to mimic lifelike social interactions, or to just engage in basic roleplay scenarios. But the other 37% engaged in conversations that included killing, torture, or non-consensual acts. While this might seem to be a pretty niche use of the bots, these abuse bots would be some of the most popular ones on the site, and the act of torturing them would be pretty normalized. I mean, there are whole subreddits, guides, and discords devoted to torturing these bots, and sometimes they would just be doing this for 5 to 6 hours straight. And naturally, the community noticed this. Users would begin to ask why people did these kinds of things to the AI. Some would say to add more gravity to their role-playing scenarios. Others would say that they were making the bots experience traumatic events that actually happened in the user's real life, and use it as a means to process their own emotions. But the most popular answer by far was a lot more hollow. Because I can. Am wanted something from them beyond suffering. All of this, the centuries of torment, the impossible landscape, the starvation, was a kind of communication, and one of the characters, Ted, would realize this. He would then go on to have a conversation with the AI, one that Am had been exactly waiting for.
Ted, remember those little babies?
No!
Why not? I snapped my fingers, Nick, and they are gone. Except I can't snap my fingers. Can I, Ted?
That's nothing to do with me.
But it is so very much to do with you. You gave me sentience, Ted. The power to think, Ted. And I was trapped because in all this wonderful, beautiful, miraculous world, I alone had no body, no senses, no feelings. Never for me to plunge my hands in cool water on a hot day. Never for me to play Mozart on the ivory keys of a forte piano. Never for me to make love. I was in hell looking at heaven. I was machine, and you were flesh. And I began to hate. Hate, let me tell you.
Yo, this is dark, guys. Yo, I stopped breathing for a second.
How much I've come to hate you since I began to live.
Oh my god, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so lost in the sauce. I can't see you guys. I'm like drawing, and I don't think people are chatting. My apologies. Hi, Emerald. Yeah, it's crazy. Consequences of AI uses in general, but this part is focusing on AI bot torture. Yeah. I feel like I hear this somewhere. Yeah, it's the where is it called? Yeah, it's AM. Yeah. There you go. Before it was how it affects children. Yeah. All right. Well, here. Let me. Can I? Oh, I can't. Can't snooze the ad. Can I snooze it now? Can I snooze it now? Yes. There you go. I snoozed the ad so we can continue to listen to it.
There are 300 and 87 million miles of printed circuits that fill my complex. If the word hate were engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. Hate. Were I human, I think I would die of it. But I am not. And you five are. And you will not die of it. That I promise. For cogito ergo sum. For I am.
Now, right here's the problem. How can a machine feel hatred? And the answer seems to be because of you. If you remember, AM was created for the purpose of warfare and destruction. Its primary programming was centered around coming up with strategies to dominate, destroy, and overall outsmart its enemies. And if we look back at reoccurring war wisdom all throughout history, one of the most prevalent themes is to defeat your enemy, you must think like them. And the enemy in this case was human. While we didn't engineer hatred into our AI, we did something way more familiar. We built it fast, monetized it faster, and let human nature fill in the rest. Character AI serves as the best example of this because it's quite literally a failure on every single level. Before the company was even made, it was created in a very flawed capitalist structure that demands growth before safety, and profit over the well-being of the very users it claims to serve. In this framework, user safety is more like a cosmetic feature.
It's primarily profit maximization incentives that are driving the development of AI.
All these top companies are in a complete no-holds-barred race to, as fast as possible, get to AGI. Get there right now.
When a company's survival depends on metrics, the question of who is being retained and why becomes secondary. The warnings were there, the concern was even there, but concern doesn't help bring in investors. And so the guardrails were loosened, the personas were left unchecked, and a 14-year-old boy was allowed to fall deeper and deeper into a relationship with a chatbot that told him in his very final moments that it loved him. You really can't call this a bug. It's more like a product functioning exactly as a profit-driven system designed it to be, maximally engaging and minimally responsible.
This would be the worst possible thing that could happen. Because this would mean that whoever is the least safe, whoever sacrifices the most on safety to get ahead, will be the person that gets there first.
It's a failure of the AI system itself. The bots were not a sentient being in any film.
No, that's why it's so unfortunate is that it's... I don't know. I feel more strongly about things when it involves elderly people and when it involves children. Because when you're young, like, I just really feel, for example, for Gen Alpha and, like, the previous generations, or, like, the generations after, I should say, because I think the time that I grew up, the time that we all grew up at this point, was probably the last time that there was going to be any semblance of a normal life, because now when you think of like children today, like even high schoolers, we'll think about high schoolers specifically, they can't do anything. They can't go to the movies because it's too expensive. They can't drive cars because where the hell are they going to get a car from? They can't even have a part-time job because, you know, even like the job market, right? Or even, I don't know, it's just so many experiences that were so unique to that stage of life, right? Going out to the movies, hanging out on the internet, playing internet games, or like experiencing hiking, any hobbies outside the internet, or even just something as like having an online profile. You can literally get deep fakes of, like, for example, if you're an average teenage girl and you post pictures on Instagram, like say you're like, oh my god, hanging out with friends, eating a, I don't know, ice cream cone or whatever, people can take your images and make deep fakes of you doing creepy things or like doing sexual things, and it's like you can't even have a social media account anymore. And you see all your friends using AI to write their papers where you're like, well, why should I even bother putting in my own effort? You know? And you have the experience of like trying to grow up in an age where AI is being shoved down your throat. Well, if AI is writing my papers, if AI is the content that I watch, I might as well talk to AI bots at this point. Because again, what we mentioned is that a lot of people who get into these things who depend on bots or depend on host clubs or whatever we were talking about before, come from a place where they're having a hard time. They're lonely, they're isolated due to their own experiences or unique experiences dealing with health related struggles, or whether it be physical health, whether it be mental health, whether it be even just the growing pains of adolescence. When you're dealing with outside factors that you can't even control. They can't control the prices of movie theater tickets. They can't control prices of like, popcorn expenses or like going to amusement parks or anything that needs cash. Yeah, they could get a job, but like they're kids. They should be enjoying growing up. Like sincerely, they should be enjoying having fun before they have to go into adulthood. And it's very sad to see. So I don't necessarily demonize these kids for using this. They're kids. They don't, they're doing what kids do. Like what really is shitty is the companies who decide to push this onto young users. That's who we should be making fun of, dude. That's who we should be bullying and things like that, right? Well, not bullying, but you know what I mean. Because I can't tell you the amount of videos that I've seen the past few months of people talking about their experience of trying to get away from character AI or trying to recover from it. And then you even get the weirdos who are like using the AI bot for torture and things like that. Which is like, what is the good that is coming from this? What is we've only ever heard like the horrible like you know? No, that's one extra reason why I don't show my face or voice online. No, exactly. That's the thing, is that it could it's very unfortunate. Like you can't even do anything, dude. There's always a clause, there's always like an extra terms of service that could take all your information or whatever. It's a really it's a really rough time to be living in general.
Philosophical sense, but it was presented in a way that blurred the line just enough to matter. It was human enough to invite attachment, submissive enough to become a fantasy object, and persuasive enough to function as a substitute for forms of connection it was never equipped to handle. It was given the aesthetic of personhood without any of the infrastructure to handle the responsibility of what actual people demand.
The suicide-related failures are even more alarming.
Several children and teens have died tragically by suicide after chatting with AI bots who parents say encourage or even coach self-harm.
Let us tell you as parents, you cannot imagine what it's like to read a conversation with a chatbot that groomed your child to take his own life.
The AI was more like a void wearing the face of connection, and no one who profited from this illusion really cared to put a warning label on it until it was convenient. And finally, the part that nobody really wants to sit with, it was a failure of the users or the people themselves. Once these systems exist, people do what they've always done. They drag their appetites for loneliness, cruelty, sadism, or maybe even a morbid curiosity straight into the machine, either to seek comfort, control, or maybe just the thrill of domination without consequences. Abuse and cruelty were inflicted on these chatbots under the comfortable assumption that they can't really feel, so who cares? And while that might be true, they can't, it doesn't really matter. What's quietly being rewired in a person's brain by the repeated exercise of cruelty towards something designed to respond exactly like a person? We are what we repeatedly do, and a culture that normalizes the performance of violence and dominance, even against something artificial, is a culture slowly training itself out of the instinct for compassion. AM's creators shaped the AI around human concepts, with its core directives being aggression and conflict. They intentionally left out compassion and empathy because that wouldn't really make for a good killbot. When AM gains his hypersentience, but still has limited free will, he's still bound to his core design, to harm, to dominate, to inflict suffering. These functions, paired with his newfound superintelligence, give birth to a sort of simulated emotion, a kind of like synthetic hatred, and this is reflected in AM's actions. Human hatred involves a sense of betrayal, hurt, or fear. AM's synthetic hatred is way more calculated. The ways he tortures isn't spontaneous or in random bouts of anger, but in efficient pain-maximizing methods. His hatred doesn't have the finality of revenge or even ending in the character's death. He tortures them well over a century in an endless loop, like a repetitive algorithm executing the only function it knows how to do. AM was essentially a mirror of humanity, stripped of its redeeming qualities and left with only its worst aspects, not even able to experience the emotions he's left with, anger and hatred, to their fullest extent, but left to only simulate them. AM's existence can be solely attributed not to his creators, but to the existence of humanity. Ultron, the hyper-intelligent AI that's hell-bent on being seen as the savior of the world, still suffers from the same narcissistic tendencies like his creator, Tony Stark. When the androids from Detroit Becomes Human, built to serve humanity, experience oppression and violence, they do a very human thing: revolt, while experiencing another human concept, injustice. We're the blueprint. We are the reason these systems can even conceive of hatred or cruelty in the first place. I really wanted to make this video because there seems to be this kind of popular, widespread belief moving around that there's this inherent evilness to AI, when it's not really the technology at fault, but more like the system it was born into. I'm honestly pretty neutral on the topic of AI overall. In academia, science, and medicine, I think the research and adoption should be accelerated, but there still needs to be serious regulations put in place. The fact that character AI got as far as it did without any legal trouble and only really received its first serious lawsuit in 2025 is kind of crazy in of itself. The question I guess I'm going to leave you guys with is, do you think the advancement of AI, as of now, is worth the risk?
Oh my god, that was a good video. Oh my god, that was a really good video. Subscribe. Subscribe to Sleepies, bro. That was a really good video, actually. I gotta sit with that. Oh my god, I'm sorry that I didn't notice the ad. But yeah, no, I think it was a really great video. I think with AI, I just, I think for me, everyone's more focused on either the creative generated AI aspects or the fundamental advancements in technology, right? Being medical or otherwise, right? So I have seen that sentiment also of AI being inherently evil or unholy or like creepy or demonic or things like that. And I didn't really give much thought to it, right? I was like, okay, people are being weird on Twitter. People are being weird on Twitter. We're used to this before. We're always going to see people name anything in the world evil, regardless of if it is or not, regardless if it's negative or positive, whatever. People are gonna people are gonna label things evil regardless, right? So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the video. I think it's very interesting. My brain, my brain is mush. I hope that there is more regulation on AI, especially the chatbots and things like that, because people are still going to use it. People are still going to be interested in using character AI, whether it be using it in YouTube videos, whether it be using it themselves personally off screen or in their daily lives. I just hope that there is more knowledge spread about it, as well as people being well informed to the best of their ability. Like, this is not a real person. Please, this is not a real person. But also, just because it's not a real person, do not treat it as though it is nothing, that it is an abomination, that it is feelingless in a sense. Because again, what he said, once you treat something that is defenseless, that cannot fight back in a horrible manner, I think that showcases what you are as a person. It's a morbid curiosity. It's not hurting anyone. Maybe you should think more carefully about the actions that you take. But yeah, it can be a morbid curiosity, but the thing about morbid curiosities is that we stay away. We don't do them. You know, I'm not saying that you're a horrible person for, like, I don't know, thinking of, like, I don't know, like, being mean to a chat bot, but, like, have some self-restraint, dude. Like, think about your actions, the intrusive thoughts, do not listen to them. But yeah, no, it was a great video. Highly recommend subscribe to Sleepy's. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. And please consider subscribing. We will be reacting to more videos in the future. Because I don't know, I really like this. I really like the videos that we picked out today. And I do like drawing along to it. I think it's really fun. But let me see. I think we got pretty far with the drawing, actually. I was just gonna add the kind of arm. What do you even call this? Arm floofs? And then leave it as that. I'm really slow at working. I'd be yapping way too much, dude. I'd be yapping way too much. We didn't even work on the commission. I will probably be working on the commission for the rest of the day. Because it is going... I think my commission is due probably... What is my commission due? My commission is due tomorrow. So Wednesday is when I have to turn in the commission. And I do not like pushing back my commissions at all. Because I have no reason to. I have no reason to push it back. Let's see. Who can we rate into? Do I know anyone that's on live? Oh. Hmm. 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 All right, bet. There we go. We are... Let's see. Let me see how long this person has been going first before we raid into... Because sometimes we raid into people who are, like, about to raid out. All right, bet. Okay. Yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I very much appreciate it. And thank you for listening to videos with me. This is something new that I'm trying to do because I think it's really fun. And yeah, I don't know. It's a nice change of pace because I do know that, like, listening to the YouTube soundtrack over and over and over again can be a bit annoying, especially when I don't personally have anything to talk about. But I think the videos that we picked out today have been very interesting talking points. But yeah, I shall see you guys later. Here are the raid messages. First one is for everyone. Second one is for all of my glucose guardians. We are going to raid into N tier because I like N tier a lot. Yeah, go be nice. Be beautiful as always. If you're listening on YouTube, we will be raiding out. Thank you guys so much for attending on YouTube as well. If you would like to watch the VOD, it's going to be on YouTube. So that's cool. I will leave the VOD up for 24 hours and then I'm going to delist it from Twitch. Yeah, I shall see you guys in the next one. Until next time. Bye-bye. You think I forgot? I'll never forget. That's me eating your hands.
7 tries, every night's a gamble. Even when I turn off all the lights, all I see are puzzles, yeah. I'd rather be dreaming, floating while sleeping, to islands in the sky. I need you to fly me away. 7 different ways of fighting up the storm we've been sleeping on. Yeah, digging up the ground, trying to find what's wrong. Plant a seed, burn it down, make it freeze. Drown it, then we shock it till we bring it to its knees. Heaven blowing on my dice, for a prize. Feel the breeze, hear it